If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.
Chapter 46. 284 AC. It was a very heart-wrenching scene indeed. Almost all of the dead seemed to be merchants and their protective escorts, and maybe a few thugs could have died as well. But this scene was my first time seeing a corpse in this life or my old life. I could feel my stomach rise, for many of the dead had either lost a limb or had a cleft stomach. I couldn't contain myself anymore, lost my concentration, then lost my connection with Erebus. As soon as the connection was lost and my vision came back to me, I started throwing up. I couldn't come to my senses for 5 or 10 minutes. After I calmed down, I realized that one of the lights representing people had disappeared. I immediately connected with Erebus again, and a more disgusting image was in front of me. The bandits were raping the 2 women they had just captured, and I got closer to hear what they were talking about. "Why did you kill the woman, you dumb bastard? We could sell her to the Ironborns for a decent price after we were done with her. You're the real idiot. Do you have a death wish to get into trading business with the Ironborns? There's a reason those sea rats always say iron price, they pay in iron, not gold. The bitch almost took my eye out. What if she's dead? Her body is still warm, it still works." While laughing maniacally, he started to go towards the other woman and slowly pushed the knife in his hand into the woman's stomach while ripping her clothes. I don't know what happened, but all my nausea and disgust suddenly disappeared. All that was left was a flood of unbridled rage, but I was not losing myself in this rage. On the contrary, my conciseness was feeling colder and stagnant. The only thing that was out of control was that primal savagery, was cast even though I didn't activate it, and the weird thing was that I didn't spend any mana either. It feels like there is a thin membrane between this rage and my conciseness. I had a feeling that I shouldn't have let this rage tear the membrane and affect me, have to try and control this rage. I started breathing deeply and regularly and channeled my mana toward the membrane I felt inside. Slowly but surely, the anger began to subside, and the transformation similar to primal savagery, was slowly being reverting back. These human-shaped pieces of shit, it would be an insult to call them shit. At least shit can be used as fertilizer, but even the land will not accept these bastards. These vile creatures have helped me to understand much better the medieval world I live in. They have made me face again the reality of how dangerous and how wild a world I am in, and I had to thank them for it, so I decided to give this thank with the brutality that they love so much. I currently had 75 mana, I would spend it all if needed in this fight and won't let any of them escape. After getting within 70 meters of their location, I reconnected to Erebus and carefully scouted the weapons they had and their positions. It was about 10 minutes before the end of Promodines, locate animals. Actually, it doesn't matter if I keep their locations in mind, and I just had to find the ones with ranged weapons. Of the 11 thugs, 5 were loading valuables on horses, 4 were scouts, and the other 2, I think, were supposed to be leaders because these 2 scumbags were defiling the poor women's bodies while everyone else was doing something else. Only 4 people had bows and arrows. Some of them could have concealed weapons like throwing knives, but from the distance from which I would start my attack, these would have no effect. I had to kill these 4 scouts before the others realized what had happened, for which I had to shoot each of them in the head so that they were neutralized without a sound. My archery practice for 3 years was really going to come in handy at this moment. I had to get closer as I had to shoot them all in the head, so I came to a distance of 40 to 50 meters and took my place behind the bushes. When I stood up, all 4 watchmen would be in my direct line of sight from this point. They couldn't see me because of the bushes, and the sounds of Poe and Erebus murders made the sounds of my movement unnoticeable in all of that cawing. I'm really good at fast shooting, but since my hands are still small and I haven't reached the physical peak, I could only hold 2 more arrows at hand, except for the arrow knocked on the bow. I prepared myself for the fact that moments later, I would be killing people even if they were criminals. I took a deep breath and cast the Promodines, locate animals, spell again because it was about 5 minutes before it expired. After one last deep breath, I drew the bow and, as I jumped to my feet, sent the 3 arrows to my target one after the other. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 3 arrows had reached their target almost simultaneously and instantly took all 3 lives. I had just taken 3 more arrows from the quiver on the left side of my waist when one of the bandits carrying valuables saw one of the dead scouts and shouted out loud. Ambush! Suddenly, they hid behind trees and carriages, trying to determine where the attacks were coming from. Thanks to my superior eyes, a distance of 50 meters seemed like a distance of 5 to 10 meters. So, I could see the other archer hiding behind one of the trees and trying to look around from there, but it didn't seem possible for me to shoot him. Just then, something occurred to me. I knocked an arrow into my bow, aimed at the tree from the side the archer was trying to look at, and let the arrow go. Swoosh! The arrow glided quickly and tangentially struck this tree, causing large pieces of bark to shatter and spread. Since these pieces were on the side the archer was trying to look at, these small pieces of wood had pierced the right side of the man's face. The archer screamed in pain and stepped from his hiding place without noticing. Right at that moment, I put an arrow through his chest. But while I was focusing on the archer, the other bandits must have found my estimated location as they were attacking from both sides, trying to surround me. As soon as I realized this, I also started to change location. First, I fired an arrow toward the leaders and gave away my location so they would focus on this position, then immediately changed my place by running around them in a wide arc. But I ordered all my crows and ravens to cackle and flew at close range to the bandits so they would not hear my movement because of all the birds' sounds. A chapter will be released each day for the next 14 days to thank the people who donated. I couldn't publish a chapter yesterday because I was sick. There will be 2 chapters for today. Chapter 47. Thanks to Promodines, Locate Animals, I could see the location of each one very clearly. I was going around them at a wide angle, and they were starting to close toward my previous position. There were only 7 left, and I still had 65 mana, which meant 6 level 2 spells or 12 level 1 spells. I started to smile slyly, they had no chance. While they thought they were surrounding me, I passed behind them from the left. The duo, whom I assumed to be the leader, did not follow behind me. They were looking this way from behind the carriages, but they were not approaching the wood line and stayed on the road. The death of 4 men in a few seconds must have made them think there was more than one archer, or they were complete cowards. Let's get them to shit a little more. Sambrar, fog cloud. The spot where all 5 bandits started to gather was suddenly covered in fog. I could hear their screams of surprise and fear, and I could also see them trying to find each other, almost blindly, as I opened my heat vision. I started making a Tegondan, earth shard, in each hand, but I kept their shape round so that when I cast the spell, it wouldn't pierce through their bodies, but when makes contact, it would catapult them back with a crushed rib cage. Because I made them round, they looked like 30 centimeters, 12 inches, diameter cannonballs. I fired both spells, and it took for a second to reach the target. One was shot right in the chest, while the other was shot in the back, but the result was the same. Accompanied by the sounds of broken bones, they flew about 10 to 15 meters in the direction of the carriages, and with this acceleration, they crashed into a few trees, and their corpses turned into a bag of mangled meat. As the remaining 3 men in the fog did not see what had happened to their 2 friends, they had no idea what to expect or be wary of. Still, the 2 of them by the carriages had clearly watched in horror as the corpses flew off with large boulders, smashed into trees, and turned into a mangled sacks. Damn it, what's going on here? What threw them this far? We have to get out of here. Let's run away while the goddamn thing in that fog is occupied with the others. Both of them were getting ready to get on the horses, and they loaded the stolen goods and ready to escape. Thanks to the heat sight and Promodines, Locate Animals, I could follow the other side of the fog and even what the duo was doing about 30 meters away, and it was clear that they were about to escape. I'm sorry, but I can't just allow you to leave like that. We are having so much fun. I quickly started running towards them, and just as they were about to get on their horses and run away, I was able to get within 20 meters and cast a spell in no time. Udrests, command animal, horse, Udrests, command animal, horse. Drop them and run. As I had ordered, the horses were suddenly going crazy and trying to throw their riders off them. It was almost like watching a rodeo, but I couldn't get caught up in it because I could sense through the heat sight 2 of the other guys spotted me and were coming towards me. When I turned around, I could see they were both running toward me, and they had hideous smiles on their faces. These 2 idiots didn't realize that I was responsible for the deaths, and they were probably coming to take me hostage. When they came to a distance of almost 10 meters, they were running side by side, and I couldn't help but seize that opportunity. Perseus, fireball. When I threw the fireball that formed in my hand, the next second, it exploded on the face of the man running on the left. This small explosion caused the man running next to him to flinch, lose his balance, and fall to the ground. As soon as I threw the fireball, I took my bow from my back, knocked an arrow, and shot the man on the ground through his leg. The man was screaming in pain while swearing non-stop. As he continued screaming, I knocked another arrow and put this one through his shoulder. I made this man suffer like this because I didn't want to waste mana on the last man, and I wanted to use all my remaining mana on the 2 leaders. So, I didn't have any mana to spare to kill the last one. After falling off their horses, both leaders preferred to run away instead of fighting. I would have preferred them to stay and fight, but running away won't change anything because R.O.B was following them with his murder. I crouched behind a bush, waiting for the man to emerge from the fog. When I saw him approaching the edge of the fog, I aimed to shoot him right away, but the man was suddenly hiding behind one of the trees, trying to look toward the screaming man. The last one looks a bit smart, didn't come running out of the fog like these 2 idiots. "Po, can you order some of your murder to get the man hiding behind the tree out of there?" "Of course, Daddy." She begins cawing, and a few crows and ravens start flying toward the man. It was a little funny when I saw the raven and the crows diving and pecking at the man, but the man swung his sword and fist and killed a few. Something happened that made me never forget this man. It proved that a crow or a raven should never be killed in front of a large flock. When the dead bird hit the ground, 20 to 30 birds took off from the trees and attacked the man. Yes, 5 to 7 of them were dead in this attack, but they were attacking without caring about it. While some were trying to gouge the man's eyes, others had ripped his ear and pecked wherever they could get, and the man fell to the ground in pain, but the birds followed him and continued to attack him until he stopped moving. Ravens and crows do hold a grudge, and they take revenge. Chapter 48. All the bandits except the 2 leaders were dead. Half an hour ago, when I saw the dead bodies, my stomach rose, but now I don't feel anything. All I felt was an unstoppable desire to chase after the 2 leaders and hunt them down. This must be what they call the thrill of the hunt. R.O.B and his murder were tracking the 2 leaders, and I could see them when I connected to R.O.B. The bandit leaders ran desperately, constantly tripping over something, and the bushes all around scratched their bodies. Both of their bodies were covered with small scratches, and they were bleeding thinly. Catching 2 adults will be a bit of a challenge, one has 7 SPD while the other has 7.5 SPD. But catching them will not be impossible because they are running with all their strength. They will get tired in 10 or 20 minutes and fall to the ground, but thanks to my buffs, I will have a stat close to them even though I can't be as fast as them. While my SPD and STR buff both give 1.8 stat, the stamina buff I just developed doubles my stamina. Valhen Kelly, aspect of cat, Valhen Tor, aspect of bull. As I ran like the wind through the trees and bushes, the thrill of the hunt grew inside me with each passing moment, making my heart beat faster and faster. With every breath I took, I could feel every heartbeat as if it was coming through a megaphone. I must have been running for about half an hour, but I didn't feel tired. Valhen Tor, the aspect of bull, is a really powerful buff. The 2 bandit leaders were resting, hiding under a tree from exhaustion. The effect of Promodines, locate animals, was over, and I had about 20 mana left. I didn't want to waste more mana because they were under R.O.B's watch. Since the bond between my familiars and me strengthened, I could now passively know their direction without wasting any mana. As I approached the 2 thugs, my excitement started to overflow, and my heartbeat was almost deafening. I would reach them in about 100 meters, and I could clearly smell their blood. This skill was a buff from my new familiar, Barris. After I bonded with Barris, my senses of smell and hearing improved tremendously. I could almost see the faint scents, like smoke trails of different colors floating in the air, and my stats also increased. I currently have stats of 5 STR and 5.2 SPD. The forest suddenly began to lose its color, and I could only see red. My hands and face were covered with a burning sensation as if on fire. Even though I got so close to them, I couldn't stop myself. POV band leader. What a goddamn day. However, how well the day had started, we had successfully ambushed a wealthy merchant caravan and had lifted loads of loot. What a beautiful massacre it was, and I was in total control. I could still taste their horror-filled begging for mercy. But 4 of my men were killed by arrows instantly, and the others were crushed under massive boulders. I don't want to know in any way what kind of creature threw those stones. I'm drained and can't take another step. I hope it can't track us. I turned to look at my brother, he looked like he was going to pass out from exhaustion. I kicked his leg. "Hey, asshole, if you are not dead, let's get up. That's enough rest, we gotta go." I had already thrown out my spear while running because I didn't have the strength to carry a weapon anymore. I felt very exposed because I was unarmed. We were just getting up when all the birds in the trees started flying and cawing at once. This cacophony took over the silence of the forest. It didn't feel natural at all, something must have frightened these birds. I was looking in all directions and listening intently to the sounds coming from the bushes, but I couldn't even feel it coming. It happened in a moment. Something that I didn't understand suddenly jumped from one of the bushes to a tree, and from there, it jumped over me and swooped down on my brother. It resembled a human being, but at the same time, it had nothing to do with it. This creature was a wild thing. It probably didn't take a second for my brother to be disemboweled and for it to rip his throat out. Because of the shock I was in, I couldn't even accept the reality in front of me. I wasn't able to make head nor tail of this situation. All I could do in the face of this situation was freeze in terror. My body was not listening to me. I always wondered why the women and merchants who died under my spear didn't try to get up and run away and beg me unnecessarily. Couldn't they see I was enjoying every moment of their terror? It turns out it was for this reason that when a person is in terror, his body stops listening to him. I couldn't help but watch in complete silence as this creature ripped my brother apart. POVMC. I think I blacked out, and when I came to myself, I was on top of a ripped-apart corpse. My face and hands felt wet, and a metallic-tasting liquid was in my mouth. When I raised my hands, what I saw were claws. Did it happen again? Primordial, primal savagery, became active before I cast the spell. I had a very different feeling on my face, too. I brought my hands to my face while being careful not to scratch my face with the claws, and what I felt was unbelievable. I had a snout like a dog or a wolf and rows of sharp teeth. What was happening to me when I realized that the liquid in my mouth was blood? It wasn't hard to understand what had happened to this corpse before me. At this moment, I realized that I was following two people and felt a presence behind me. When I turned back, I saw a man out of his mind with fear. If I didn't know what kind of psychopath he was, I could really pity this man. I'm seeing this for the first time in my life right now. The man's hair was starting to turn white with fear. He was holding his mouth so tightly as not to make a sound that his nails were beginning to cut the corners of his mouth. When he saw me turn towards him, his eyes widened, and he suddenly stopped breathing. Where? What should I do? He was staring with such horror that I couldn't help myself from doing it. With my roar, the man screamed and struggled to escape. He barely managed to get up, ran a few steps, tripped, and fell to the ground. I quickly went up to him and tore his Achilles tendon with the claw of my right hand. When I took this cut, an incredible pain struck my right hand. Damn, I think I broke my finger, I must have pushed my hands too hard when I blacked out. Chapter 49. 284 AC. My hand was hurting badly, and the ache rippled like giant waves. While I was dealing with the pain in my hand, the last bandit was struggling on the ground with screams of pain, and he tried to get up and run away, but all his efforts were in vain. The Achilles tendon in his right leg was torn, and he could not use that foot. There was no weird bend in my fingers, indicating that the fracture was not fragmented or that it was a fissure rather than a fracture. One thing was certain, the medical knowledge I now had was sufficient if it was a fissure or a hairline fracture, but if my fingers were broken, I had to ask the maester for help. I know how to treat such conditions in theory because of the books I've read, but having theoretical knowledge of something didn't mean I had practical skills in it. I wrapped my right hand with a few pieces of cloth and branches so it wouldn't move and get worse. Wrapping my hand was not easy, and doing fine work with these claws was difficult. I couldn't bring myself back to normal as I felt lucid but, at the same time, bloodthirsty and excited. After wrapping my hand with great difficulty, I turned my full attention to the writhing bandit. Please spare my life, I'll do whatever you want. Let me serve you, please, I'll even be your slave. I'll bring you more people so it'll be easier for you to hunt, please forgive me. He continued to beg me endlessly as he writhed on the floor in pain. Why are you so terrified? What did you do when those poor women were begging you to spare them? My speech surprised both him and me. My voice had changed entirely, the child's voice had completely disappeared and was replaced by a guttural voice close to a growl. He kept whining on the floor with his head in his arms and wouldn't answer me. I actually looked a bit like a werewolf. I guess everyone wouldn't be able to respond out of fear if a werewolf had stood over them and asked questions. I looked like a furless werewolf, a werewolf without supernatural powers. I still didn't know why I turned into this shape, but this shape gave nothing else but sharp teeth and claws. My form might have changed, but my physical strength did not change. Let's get you a little more still, so you don't have to struggle too hard while I'm tearing you apart. Let agon, snare. Ah, please spare me. After I immobilized his body, I slowly and softly thrust the claws of my left hand into his body without straining my hand because I didn't want to hurt my left hand too. After stabbing him with my claws, I slowly moved my hand, and deep cuts formed. Don't worry, I'm going to give you the same amount of mercy you gave when your victims begged you for mercy. I will show you 1,000 times the death you gave them. Rest assured, a brutal and terrifying death awaits you. After torturing the bandit for another 10 or 20 minutes, my anger at him had subsided, and the sadism was starting to make my stomach turn. But I didn't want to give him a quick and painless death. That's when what happened to the other bandit occurred to me. Poe and Erebus, would you like to eat this man? Daddy, I'm not hungry. I, on the other hand, don't like human flesh at all. I never eat it unless I'm starving. Then order your murders to eat, tell them to begin to eat from his limbs and not from his head. When I said that, Poe and Erebus started to caw, and soon after, about 40 birds on the trees flew over the man. The agonizing screams and groans lasted for about 10 minutes, and I rewarded him with a well-deserved death. He couldn't stand the pain and probably died of a heart attack or passed out because of blood loss. When I realized that he was dead, I suddenly felt a sense of relief flowing through me. The membrane covering the primal rage inside me was shaking and vibrating rapidly. I knew I could discover something if I touched that membrane, but the real question was, could I keep that discovery under control? I almost died 6 months ago because of the healing magic, so I didn't want to interact with this membrane until I reached level 3. The thing that made me transform and caused me to black out must have something to do with this membrane. Now that my hunt was over, calmness began coming over me, and I could feel I was returning to normal. The transformation of my hands was causing a bit of pain, especially when my face was reshaped. It really hurt. I mean, considering that the shape of my entire skull had changed, it seemed normal. While this transformation was happening, this pain suddenly gave way to a burning sensation. It was as if my hands and face were on fire. My body continued to recover as I remained calm, but the injury in my right hand had not healed. There was still a pain lodged in my hand. The bandages and branches had loosened and fallen to the ground because when my hand regained its size, it was almost half the size of a clawed form. Now that I had calmed down, I realized that this whole fight had left me tired, that if I had curled up on the floor and lay down, I could have fallen asleep. I hurriedly went back to the place where the caravan was ambushed. I couldn't let these poor people be preyed upon by wild animals, except the bandits. I didn't care what would happen to them. I made a deep and long grave at the edge of the forest using formodagon, mold earth, and neatly lined up the bodies one by one inside the grave, then covered the grave again using formodagon, mold earth. Sorry, but I don't have the time or mana to prepare an individual grave for each of you. I hope you will be happy wherever you are now. Now I'm getting all your valuables as a fee in return for this help. Anyway, you won't need them wherever you go. There was a bag of jewelry, some valuables in the horse pouches, and 8 horses. 4 of the horses were tied to the merchants' carriages, and the other 4 belonged to the escorting guards. The bandits actually had horses too, but I ordered 2 of them to leave so that the leaders would not escape. It is better than nothing. I could cash them out in Wintertown. Comment. 14 Comment. Vote. Chapter 50, Chapter 50. Chapter 50. 284 AC. I didn't even have enough strength to go to my hut in the forest, but I didn't want to sleep here in an open field, either. Carnivorous animals will soon come here, considering the corpses lying around. After about 100 or 200 meters away from the area where the bodies were, I climbed onto a large tree and used formohba, mold plants, so that the branches of the tree wrapped around me like a cocoon. This will keep the wind and other creatures out and make it look like a densely branched tree when viewed from below. Of course, the horses indicated that there were people here, but it was almost impossible for them to find me. You never know if the bandits have other accomplices, being cautious is always good. After about 5 hours of sleep, I woke up fresh but starving. I had my sword and dagger at my waist, but I had no idea where my bow and quiver were. I still had it when I ran toward the bandit leaders, but I must have thrown it out when I blacked out and went feral. Since it would be tough to hunt without a bow and arrow, I chose the easiest method of hunting, using magic. After I found a rabbit, I immobilized it thanks to the Enratio, Entangle, spell, and all I had to do was go to it and cook the paralyzed rabbit. After filling my stomach, I sensed that there was a difference in my mana heart, and when I focused on the mana heart, all the mana in my body was suddenly drawn into my heart, and then mana suddenly spread through my body like a big explosion. For a moment, I thought I had made a leap to level 3, but there was no increase in mana count or quality, but pieces of information about a few level 2 spells were flowing to my mind like water. Illudogelmio, Warding Wind, was a defensive spell, creating a sphere of wind around me, deflecting the projectiles coming towards me, thus preventing them from hitting me. Currently, casting this spell costs me 10 mana and has a 20 minutes duration, but I don't think it can endlessly deflect projectiles for 20 minutes. It should have an upper limit, and I can't just ask people to fire arrows at me. First, it would be dangerous for me, and second, it would be so weird people wouldn't fire arrows at a kid. Perseus Agros, Flame Blade, the name of the spell, was self-explanatory, but why would I want to blaze my sword that would be a debuff and not a buff? If the sword is on fire, it means that every cut I make will be cauterized, which means that there will be no bleeding. On the other hand, if the fire is strong enough and the cut is deep and big enough, it might not cauterize the wound. It could be 2 times painful, it would need more testing. It may come in handy in dark places too. The cost and duration were the same as in the first spell, 10 mana and 20 minutes. Nocturvigio, Night Vision, this spell's name is self-explanatory. The only plus point I will add is that it does not blind the caster in case of a sudden increase of light like normal night vision. If there is a sudden increase in light while this spell is active, the environment becomes brighter, but it immediately adapts to this brightness without harming the eyes, costs 10 mana, and lasts 10 minutes. In Annie's Motu, Traceless Movement, thanks to this spell, when I moved into the forest, I would not leave any traces behind me. I would be able to move without leaving any traces of smell, footprint, sound, plant or animal disturbances. Even if I stepped on the mud, there would be no footprints. Even if I walked through the most skittish birds, they wouldn't be afraid of me, the plants wouldn't be crushed under my feet, and the bushes wouldn't break because of me. While this spell was active, they would all give way to me. The only downside is the second I show any aggressive movement, the spell will break. The upside is it only has 2 minutes of cooldown. It costs 10 mana and lasts 20 minutes. Protagonaries, Protection from Poison, this was both active and passive. It was passive for me, but it was an active spell for others. I don't think this is complete immunity against poison, it is more of a resistance than immunity. I have to do experiments starting from non-fatal poisons. Many bunnies are going to die for this. It costs 10 mana and lasts 5 minutes. The last spell was Mino Depuro, Lesser Purify. We can say that this spell is for filtering liquids, destroying all living beings in the liquid. Of course, this spell will not work against chemical pollution, and it will not be able to tell the difference between the chemical structure of water and other chemicals. This spell uses 1 mana to purify each liter of liquid. So, I can purify 91 liters of water with all my mana. There are still 2 hours until the sun goes down. I have to catch as many rabbits as possible in the next hour. So that when I get back to Winterfell, I can experiment, and I have to buy every kind of poison I can find. However, I have 20 kinds of non-lethal and nearly 20 deadly plant varieties. For the past year, I have collected not only medicinal plants but also poisonous plants. You never know what will be useful and when it will be useful. Being a hoarder sometimes works. Everyone was looking at me strangely when I entered Winterfell with 9 horses. I already had 1 horse and had become a large convoy with the 8 horses I had collected as loot. Although the guards recognized me, they did not allow me to enter without explaining the situation. When I explained the situation, I suddenly found myself getting scolded by Rodrik. Chapter 51. 284 AC. Boy, are you crazy? What did you promise 9 moons ago? Didn't you promise to run away if you were in mortal danger? Let alone running away, you're even running after the bandits. We were afraid that they would ambush you, and now we need to be afraid of you going bandit hunting. We were now in Rodrik's quarter. When I returned to Winterfell, the guards informed Rodrik, and he learned what had happened. I've never seen him this angry, I think blood will start flowing from my ears in a few minutes. He has been lecturing for an hour and does not look tired. This speech reminded me of a time in my previous life when I was a high school student and stole our car to go for a joyride and got caught by the cops. When the police brought me home, I received such a big lecture from my father, who was just as angry. I think Rodrik feels responsible for me because I've been training under him, and he acts like that because he's afraid something will happen to me. Boy, are you listening to me? Yes, I'm listening. While hunting in the woods, I saw bandits raid a trader's caravan and slaughter all those poor people. I got so angry that I was blinded by anger for a moment and wanted to tear them all apart. At first, I backed off, and after some thought, I realized that if I could kill their archers right away, I was strong enough to destroy them all, and I was right about that. It wasn't hard at all to pelt them with arrows. After all, these were not trained soldiers, and after 6 or 7 of them had died, they all began to flee like cravens. I don't regret what I did. I would do the same thing again if I encountered a situation like this. There is only one thing I regret, not being able to get there 15 or 20 minutes earlier and not being able to save those people. At least, that is what I want you to think. Of course, I'm not a monster. I will always try to save people if saving other people won't have fatal consequences for me, but I don't have a savior complex. I would never risk my own life for people who are complete strangers and have nothing to do with me. When I said this, the angry expression on his face improved a little, and it was evident that he was trying hard not to grin. If this was not dangerous at all, how did you injure your hand? Maester said your fingers are fractured and would not heal in less than a month. Breaking my fingers has nothing to do with bandits, my carelessness caused it. I tripped while running in the woods and hit my hand on something hard. POV Rodrik. Every time I hear about this boy, I am in awe. This time, he cleared 11 bandits with just a bow. When did you become so proficient with the bow? Little brat put his hands on his hips and said proudly. I've been working with a bow as much as I've worked with a sword for years. Of course, it's normal to be surprised that you haven't seen a gem like me in your life. It's tough to be a genius. I'm talented at everything I do. What can I do? This is my curse. I don't know when it started, but the corner of my mouth was twitching, and something inside me told me to give this brat a hard smack on the head. You cheeky brat, don't try to be cute. When did you become so good at archery? I knew you were training, but I didn't know you were such a proficient archer. I'm telling you the truth, I'm a genius at everything I do. I took a deep breath, slowly got up, and walked over to him. I stood before him, started smiling, and gave him a good smack on the back of his head. Stop messing around, I'm asking a serious question. He started rubbing the back of his head as he winced. I'm not messing around, I'm giving you a serious answer. I'll prove it to you when my hand gets better. To prove how good I am at archery, I can say this. You know I hunt about 10 rabbits in the forest daily, right? So, what, not just you, all hunters hunt about 10 rabbits a day, and they hunt big games like boar and deer. Yes, but they don't hunt as I do. When I hunt rabbits and rats, I always scare them first so I can have a small target that moves quickly. What's the use of hunting rabbits if I don't do that? I don't need the few coppers I will earn from those rabbits anyway. As you know, I earn 60 gold dragons per month from the deal I made with Lord Stark. I also learned recently why Lord Stark bought so many smoke bombs. He gives these bombs to scouts and patrol soldiers. When ambushed or in a bad situation, they can use these bombs and have the chance to escape or get in a better position to fight. Yes, it was not a confidential matter. Thanks to you, many soldiers could escape from bad situations that would normally have killed them. Which maniac practices archery by first scaring the rabbits and then hunting them down? How many archers in Westeros can regularly shoot down an animal that moves so unpredictably and fast? Wait a minute, I just realized. Did you just say you're hunting rats too? Why are you hunting them? I'm sure I'll regret asking this question. Because it is more difficult to shoot them. Already skittish animals when I scare them, they run from place to place with all their might. I don't find it difficult to hunt rabbits anymore, it's more fun to hunt rats, and sometimes I even miss them. I usually get 10 out of 10 with rabbits, but with rats, I average at 7 out of 10. What kind of monster are you? You are definitely not human. How can a person be this good at everything he does? What can I do? It is God-given, and the God who brought me into this world made me this way. Chapter 52. After getting scolded by Rodrik, I went to my room. Just then, Imu poked his head out of my shirt and began to speak in a whisper-like voice. Master hungry, Master hungry. You are hungry, huh? When I asked this question, his head started to nod. Do you want to hunt yourself, or shall we find you something to eat? Me hunt. Then let's take a detour, let me drop you off at God's Wood. You can find something to hunt there. Imu and Varys started talking 4 moons ago but can't form complete sentences like Poe and Erebus. They can only use simple expressions at the moment. I don't know why exactly. I wonder if the ravens are talking like a human because they are much more intelligent animals, or is it related to the twins being my familiar for more than a year? I couldn't talk to animals yet when I was connected with twins. I gained this skill when I became level 2, and it isn't talking in the real sense of the word because most animals are not smart enough to talk even among themselves, but I can relay emotions and intent to animals with this skill or receive it. They could always talk if we believed the siblings' words, but I didn't understand them. My hypothesis is that, I think the combination of the 2 possibilities is the cause. The natural intelligence of animals must have an effect, but it is a fact that they are starting to become as intelligent as humans as time goes on. After I left Imu at the God's Wood, I started to go to my room. I could see the soldiers and people around me whispering while looking at me. What happened must have begun to spread to everyone. There was a different expression in the eyes of every person who heard what happened. Some of them looked frightened, some of them disgusted, while some of the soldiers greeted me approvingly. When I got to my room, I found Arya and Bran playing with Varys. Come on, Varys, come on, boy. She was trying to play fetch, but Varys was not participating. As I got a little closer, a childlike voice began to echo in my mind. No. No fetch, give stick. It looks like Varys wants to play tug of war. Arya managed to free the stick from Varys' mouth and threw it. Come on, boy, come on, bring the stick. Varys turned his head the other way as if offended and tried not to look at Arya. No fetch. Just then, he saw me, and his eyes widened. He quickly ran towards me and started jumping excitedly, zigzagging around me. Master, 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 play, 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 play. Suddenly Varys' voice began to echo in every corner of my mind. Varys, no. Sit down, listen to me, be good. Good boy. He had calmed down a bit, and I started to scratch the top of his head. He liked this, but he was still nagging me. Play, master, play. His voice was no longer excited but more pleading, and at the same time, he was making a sound like crying. He was wielding a puppy's biggest weapon. He made a begging sound with big tearful eyes while falling at my feet. Arya came to me while pouting. Aemir, why are you upsetting Varys? Good boy, don't cry. He began stroking Varys' head. Okay, I will play. Go bring the stick. As soon as I said that, Varys immediately stopped begging and went like lightning to pick up the stick that Arya had just thrown. Master, master, stick, stick, fetch, fetch. I took the stick from his mouth and threw it away. Varys immediately followed after it and immediately brought the stick back. Why didn't Varys play fetch with me but plays with you? I don't know, maybe he likes me more. While tugging at Varys's cheeks, Arya pretended to be offended and said. Varys, I'm the one who always brings you meat, why don't you love me more? Meat, 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 meat. As soon as he heard the word meat, he started sniffing around like crazy and sniffing everyone's hands in turn. Then he continued touring around, looking for meat. Varys, there is no meat, calm down. No meat, no meat. His voice sounded sad. Arya, maybe he doesn't want to play this game with you because you've only been playing fetch with him since morning. She sighed as if suddenly realizing what she had done. Look, there's a short rope with knots over there, that is Varys' toy. He might want to play with you if you play tug of war using that. While Arya went to get the rope, I was playing fetch with the stick that Varys always brought back. This time I pretended to throw the stick but hid it behind me. Varys seemed to run at first, but when he couldn't see the stick, he looked ahead and then at me. He looked confused. Stick? No stick, master, no stick, master, stick. He started looking at me with questioning eyes, but when he saw that I was hiding my hand behind me, I guess he noticed, and after a slight growl, he ran around me to check. Seeing the stick behind me, he said in an angry tone. Master hide stick, master throw. After half an hour of playing with Varys and the children, I left Barris in Arya's capable hands and entered my room. I was exhausted today, and hunting those thugs completely exhausted me both physically and mentally. That's why I decided to go to bed early today. I didn't have the will to train with either sword or magic. Imma was sending me a message to come and get him, but I didn't want to go all the way to the God's Wood. So, I teleported him here using the Vocadini, Summon Beast, spell. As I used the spell while lying on the bed, Imma materialized right above me and fell on my stomach. It was obvious from the bloating in his stomach that Imma had a good meal, and since he usually slept under my pillow, he started to slowly crawl from the top of my stomach to the bottom of my pillow. I slowly fell asleep too. I don't know how long it took, but I started having disturbing nightmares and suddenly jumped out of bed. The sun hadn't risen yet, and I didn't feel the slightest regret or remorse for killing those bandits, but my subconscious mind must be disagreeing with me because I was constantly seeing the terrified faces of the bandits I had killed. I had utterly lost my sleep, and it seemed like it was not coming back anytime soon, so I decided to practice magic. I don't plan to leave the castle for a while because of my hand injury. For now, I was going to do my training in the training space. Over time, this area had grown from 4x4 meters to 20x20. First, I wanted to meditate to calm myself down, so I sat where I was and closed my eyes. Just when I started to feel tranquil, an unbearable pain struck my chest. Ah! I opened my eyes with a scream of pain, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I had a spear in the middle of my chest. I started to feel as if I was underwater, drowning, but the cause was not water, it was blood. I opened my mouth and tried to say something, but nothing came out of my mouth except wheezing and blood. Oh my God, what an unbearable pain! I couldn't move or even think because of this pain. Just at this moment, a second pain sprung up, and this time it was coming from my right shoulder. This must be a nightmare, I must still be dreaming. I tried to open my mouth and scream, but no sound came out except a low groan. There was a sword sticking out of my shoulder. My throat was completely filled with blood, and because I couldn't breathe, I felt a burning sensation different from anything I had ever felt. The pain caused by weapons began to fill me, and only one thing reverberated in my mind. Is this what it feels like to die? Chapter 53. That incredible pain was now over, but everything was in complete darkness. Have I come to the end of another life? It was a short life but fun. While I was brewing in self-pity, a ray of light appeared in the pitch black. It must be the R.O.B. He must be coming to take me back, and I even failed the mission he gave me. Ha ha ha, I don't even know the mission yet. He said I'd find out when the time comes. Wait a minute, how the hell did I die? I was meditating inside the training dimension, and suddenly I was pierced in the back with a spear and sword. How is this possible? While these thoughts were echoing in every corner of my mind, the light coming from the opposite direction was getting bigger and bigger, and suddenly everything was flooded with light, and I found myself in a white room. Isn't this the training space? What's going on here? Why did I go back to the training space? Didn't I die? Suddenly, a great terror came over me. I couldn't understand what was happening. Just then, the spear that pierced me came to mind, and I started looking around like crazy. As I turned behind, a spear pierced my stomach and went out of my back. Damn, it hurts so bad. Again. An excruciating pain started to vibrate through my body. I was paralyzed, I couldn't move, and my eyes couldn't focus. There was a humanoid silhouette in front of me, but I couldn't tell if it was human or something else because my eyes wouldn't focus, as if looking through frosted glass. While trying to take painful breaths, anger started to rise inside me, and my strength started returning. With this anger, I tried to grab the silhouette before me, but I couldn't grab him because of the spear. Yet I lunged with all my might, and I could feel the spear continuing to advance through me. I approached the silhouette and grabbed it by the arm. My eyes were starting to focus. Was this what they called the last burn before death? I could see clearly now, but I couldn't believe my eyes. He was the bandit leader I killed in the forest, turning me into skewered meat for the second time. Just then, another bandit swung his sword at my head, and everything went black again. I was in this pitch-black darkness again, and a light was starting to approach from afar, but the terror and panic I was in did not decrease. On the contrary, it was increasing. Before I could understand what was happening, I again found myself in the white room. This time I immediately started looking around and saw bandits standing about 5 meters away. There were so many of them. The leader, with the spear, quickly approached me and lunged. I panicked but managed to cast the Corsambi, Oak's Healed, spell in time. I was covered in bark-like armor on both my arms, from my wrists to my shoulders, and I took my guard by crossing both arms in front of my chest. Just as the tip of the spear touched my right forearm, it felt like I was hit by a truck. This blow sent me flying several meters back. The strength difference was too significant. My heart kept beating like it would jump out of my chest, and there was a deep dent in the armor on my right arm. I drew the dagger from my belt and quickly approached the bandit as I deflected the spear with my right arm. I wanted to slit his throat immediately, but I noticed another bandit swinging his sword from my left side, so I had to step back while swinging the dagger. My dagger cut the bandit's throat, but it was superficial and didn't do any severe damage. Attacks were falling on me from all directions. I couldn't let them surround me. So, I cast the Sambrar, Fog Cloud, spell and tried to put distance between us, but they continued to attack without fear. It was obvious that they were attacking me blindly without seeing me. As I ran backward, my back hit a wall, and I had reached the end of the damn room. I couldn't stand here, or they would surround me. I turned my heat sight skill on and observed the bandits. They were running around blindly and bumping into each other occasionally, but they were slowly adapting. I had managed to calm myself down a bit, but I still couldn't hear anything other than my heartbeat. Meanwhile, I began to prepare 2 Tegondan, Earth Shard, spells, and just then, one of the bandits noticed me and started coming toward me. I had to cancel one of the spells because it wouldn't be ready in time, so bad that mana was wasted. As I cancelled the spell, I immediately cast the Letagon, Snare, spell with my empty hand. The man tripped and fell. I plunged my dagger into his neck and took the sword from his hand. Meanwhile, I threw the now ready Tegondan, Earth Shard, to the 2 bandits in a line. One was dead, and the other had both of his legs mangled badly. The moment I sent the Tegondan, Earth Shard, spell, the wall of fog broke apart due to the spell's speed for a few seconds, causing 4 bandits to see me. They started to charge toward me, not in order like in the movies, but all 4 of them simultaneously. I used Valhen Kelly, aspect of cat, and Valhen Grives, the aspect of bear, buffs. I currently have 7.3 STR and 7.5 SPD stats. My stats were higher than usual. I wonder if it had something to do with the fight or flight response. When the bandits were close, I cast Letagon, Snare, on the frontmost enemy. It tripped and fell to the ground, causing the other 2 bandits to trip over his body and fall. While the other 3 were trying to stand up, I met the attacking bandit and rolled away from his left diagonal attack while simultaneously using my dagger to cut through the Achilles tendon. The bandit fell to the ground, and he swung his sword wildly from where he fell. So I had to take another step away from him and couldn't finish him off. Meanwhile, I turned to the fallen bandits. They had already stood up, so I ran at them, threw the dagger at the front bandit, and hit him right in the throat. Before the 2 remaining bandits came to their senses, I approached them and used the Jelm's Renegan, Lightning Touch, spell against them both. I had never used this spell before as it was only effective within 5 meters, but it was really deadly. The reason I used this spell was because I had calmed down a bit more and, thanks to that, realized how much mana I was wasting on level 2 spells. I had only 25 mana, but 6 healthy and 1 injured enemy remained. At this moment, the bandit whose Achilles tendon I cut limped to his feet, but he could not put any weight on his leg. So, he started bouncing towards me. Are you kidding me? They acted like the whites in the stories old Nan told the Stark children, monsters incapable of feeling fear or pain. I took my dagger from the corpse in front of me and threw it at the bandit who was trying to bounce towards me right in the middle of his forehead. Chapter 54. I didn't even have time to take a breath yet, and following the sounds of fighting, the 6 remaining bandits had already started to surround me. I only have enough mana to cast 5 level 1 spells, and I must not waste any of it. Earth Ball and Ice Ball spells are the ones that can do the most damage, but their cast times are much higher than other spells. That is why these spells are not very useful when bandits are attacking me at close range. My most effective spells at close range are Jelmio Indigo, Wind Impact, and Jelm's Renegan, Lightning Touch. I can't let them surround me, I must act fast. The fog magic was still in effect, but the fog layer was not as dense as before. With every passing second, the bandits were getting closer. If I attack with magic now, I can kill 2 of them, but the other 4 will be on top of me, and I don't have the physical capabilities to beat 4 adults in close-range combat. I picked up one of the swords on the floor and threw it toward the right side of the room with all my strength. Immediately after that, as I grabbed my dagger from the bandit's head, I started to move to the left as silently as I could. As the sound of the sword hitting the wall and falling to the ground came from the right side, the attention of all the bandits was turned in that direction and they started to go there. I approached the bandits on the far left without making a sound. I put my sword and dagger on my waist, approached the bandits until I was 3 meters away, and cast the Jelm's Renegan, lightning touch, spell with both hands. Both of them got hit by the lightning arcs and fried, and they fell to the ground while smoke rose from their bodies. 4 remaining, my heart was not slowing for a moment. One mistake, and I would relieve that incredible pain. Hearing the sounds of their 2 friends made as they died, the bandits started to come this way, but the closest was 8 meters away, and they weren't surrounding me because they were hurrying this way. When I saw 2 of them running in a single file, I thought of my first kill, and I wanted to try hitting 2 birds with 1 stone again. I started casting the earth ball spell and fired it. Right at that moment, both of them changed course, and they were all starting to surround me, and because of that, I missed. Damn it, 1 spell went to waste. What's done is done, I don't have time to waste on regret. I shouldn't stay in one place, or they might corner me, so I started running fast. We have similar speeds. The fastest ones had 7.2 speed, and my speed with the buff was 7. I was trying to get behind them while running the wall edge of the room, but they noticed this and changed their direction. The faster 2 are closer to me, the other 2 5 or 6 seconds behind them. The closest one raised his sword to attack, but I used Gelmio Indigo, Wind Impact, and caused him to fly backward. I could hear his chest bones crushing. The one behind him had to change his direction to avoid crashing into his friend. Using that opening, I closed the distance, cut off his arm holding the sword, and cut his neck with an upward slash. I only had enough mana left for 1 more spell, and I had to kill the one with the spear with it. If he dies, it would be easier for me to kill the other one without mana with the help of my bark armor. Spear's stab attacks are generally faster than swords, and deflecting them with bark armor is much more dangerous and difficult. On top of that, it has so much more reach than my sword. I have only 1 chance, and I must not miss. While cutting the other bandit's neck, the other 2 bandits closed to gap with me. Without hesitation, I cast the Jelm's Renegan, lightning touch, spell and aimed at the spearman. There should be no way for him to evade a lightning spell at this distance. As the magic activated, the spear bandit grabbed the other bandit by the neck and pushed him toward me. That is why the spell hit the other one. Damn it, this asshole used his friend as a meat shield. Without waiting, he stepped in and lunged at me. Now wasn't the time to be surprised, and at the last moment, I stepped sideways, but I wasn't fast enough. His spear cut me from the middle of my chest to my right shoulder, but it wasn't a deep cut. My chest felt like it was on fire, but the bleeding was very light. After the bandit's stabbing attack, he turned his move into a swing and aimed at my head instead of pulling back his spear. I met the spearhead with my right arm, and there was a metallic sound as the spear made contact with my bark armor. This blow was more powerful than I thought. I planned to block this blow, then step in and stab him, but this blow shook me a lot, so I stumbled to the left side. My STR is 7, but his STR was 8, I never thought he was this strong. He swirled his spear and tried to hit me on the chin with the staff side of the spear. I managed to put my arm between my chin and the shaft, but the blow nonetheless made contact with my head. I lost my balance entirely and fell. While falling, it felt like time slowed down. Am I going to die again? I don't want to feel that pain again. How is it possible they are inside my training dimension? Right then, it dawned on me that I was inside my training dimension. Nobody other than me and my familiars can enter this space. None of them is real, none of this is real. I was on the ground, and the bandit was preparing for the last strike. I can see the spear coming at my head with great detail. I was entirely focused on the spear. Then I shouted. Stop! Chapter 55. 284 AC. My heart felt like it was going to jump out of my chest, I could almost hear my heartbeats. The bandit's spear was a few centimeters from my face, and he lay motionless as if frozen. I almost died again, so I took deep breaths to calm down. It was just as I thought, when I calmed down and started to think, everything started to make sense. It was normal for me to realize this so late that someone who ate a spear in the stomach and died in excruciating pain couldn't be expected to think rationally. The terror I was in was over, and now I could think. While describing the skill, by saying enemy, the R.O.B should have meant them. I had never killed anything I considered an enemy before, which is why the room was empty. But now those bandits have become training dummies. So every time I kill someone I see as an enemy, will a copy of them come here? I stood up, went to one of the bodies, and began examining them. Are these one-time things, or can they be resurrected? I thought I was immortal when the R.O.B said you couldn't be killed in the training space. How was I supposed to know I would die and be resurrected? I raised my head and started shouting. Are you enjoying watching this, you sadistic psycho? Are you sure you're an order god? I think you're closer to a chaos god. You could have at least lessened the pain receptors a little bit. I can still feel the spears skewering me. I raised my head again and called out. If you could at least slip an instruction manual into it, do we have to discover and work on everything from scratch? At that moment, something came to my mind. I put my hand on the wall of the room, as I did with the Weirwood tree in God's Wood, and I started to spread my mana towards the wall of the room. After a few minutes, my mana was spread throughout the room, and all the information about the room began to flow into my mind. Authenticate infinite training. Infinite training, a room prepared to gain combat experience. No one can enter except the owner and his familiars. A copy of the enemies the Druid kills spawns in the room, but for now, a maximum of 20 enemies can be activated at a time. Enemies have the same magic and combat abilities as when they were alive. The Druid and his familiars will be reanimated upon death. The room size will grow according to the number of saved enemies. Since this room is for training, the Druid can control enemy behavior, and room settings can be changed with verbal commands. Other information is locked. Room setting, spawn upon entry, aggressive, mass attack, emotions and thinking ability locked. Despawn. The spear bandit and all the corpses disappeared from the room in an instant, the sword in my hand and all the blood on the floor disappeared as well. Spawn all enemies. After I said that, 11 men appeared on the other side of the room and started running towards me. One of them took the bow from his back and was about to shoot an arrow at me. Stop! They were all frozen like statues. One of them had both feet in the air as he ran with long strides, and even the arrow he shot was suspended in the air. It was fascinating. Despawn. Again, all of them disappeared at once. Change room setting, spawn on command, attack on command. I put my hand back on the wall and checked if the settings had changed, and all had changed as I wanted. Spawn one enemy. While saying this, I was thinking about which one I wanted, and the room spawned the one with the spear as I wanted. The dummy just stood there without moving. Attack. When I said that, he started running towards me. Stop. When I said, go back to where you started, he teleported to where he first spawned. Attack using only half your strength and speed. He started attacking me again, but now he was very slow, and his speed was really 3.5. I countered the spear attack with my bark armor and realized that he had a strength of 4. Despawn. I started to feel very tired when I began to relax thoroughly, so I left the room and collapsed on my bed. I woke up drenched in a cold sweat. I had a nightmare again, but this time I wasn't the one doing the killing, I was the one who got killed. I was unconsciously holding the spot where the spear had stabbed me. I really died last night. I couldn't breathe now, it was like the room was collapsing onto me. My familiars were starting to feel the panic I was feeling, and they were beginning to get restless in the room too. In a panic, they were looking in the room for what made me act like this. Poe approached me when they couldn't find it and landed before me. Daddy, why are you so scared? There's no one inside, just us. Thanks to the bond between us, they could sense my panic, and I could feel their worry about me. I started to direct the mana inside me to my brain to calm down, and it worked. The panic attack I was experiencing began to subside. Don't worry, I'm fine now, I had a terrible nightmare, that's why this happened. Now it is over. Even though I said that from the connection, I still felt they were worried about me. After meditating for half an hour, I got up and said, let go and break our fast, what do you want to eat, guys? The shout of Poe and Erebus suddenly resounded in my mind. Eggs. Masta, moose. When I got out of the building, I went into the shed right next to it and took one of the mice in the iron cage that I hid behind the straw bales on the floor and held it towards Emu, who was coiling around my neck. The mouse was struggling, but Emu stuck like lightning and bit the mouse, and he wrapped around it. After a few seconds, the mice stopped moving, so Emu gulped it down immediately. Chapter 56. 284 AC. After breaking my fast and feeding my familiars, I made my way to the courtyard to meet Rob and John. One of the things I noticed when I woke up this morning was that my mana level had increased. My maximum mana was now 100. I could sense that I was getting close to a breakthrough. I think I could become a level 3 druid in a few months. The fights to the death in the forest and the one in the training space were starting to take effect. Thanks to 5x, these two fights were as effective as if I had fought to the death 10 times. I was just passing by the stables when I heard a bang behind me. As soon as I heard that sound, I turned around and jumped back, casting the Coursambi, Oak's Healed, spell and bracing myself with my arms to protect my chest. My heart started beating like crazy, and I was ready to cast attack spells in the direction of the sound. But at that moment, I realized that a horse kicking on the barn door made the noise. When I realized this, my heart started to slow down, and everyone around me was looking at me like I was crazy. Thank God the bark armor on my arm was not visible because it was under my shirt, but many people had heard me shout Coursambi, Oak's Healed, and so they were looking at me like I was crazy. It seems that what I've been through has affected me a little more deeply than I thought. The fact that I was so skittish and ready to attack made me wonder if what they call PTSD was something like this. My right hand is injured anyway, I guess I better not go out of Winterfell for a while. At least I should rest a bit until my hand is fully healed. When I got to the courtyard, I saw Rob and John waiting for me. When Rob saw me, he raised his hands and shouted. Ermer, at last, you are here. Where were you? We became trees while waiting for you. Don't be a drama queen. I'm here. As soon as I said that, Rob's face fell, and he said in a stern voice. I think you are forgetting whom you're talking to, you commoner, you are in the presence of the next Lord of Winterfell. For a few seconds, there was a deadly silence. We were both looking at each other without blinking our eyes, and suddenly we both burst into waves of laughter. Rob, while laughing, said. I got you for a second there, right? Nat, I knew you were joking. You did not, and I saw the shock on your face for a second. Whatever man, let's get on with it. What did you concoct for today? What kind of mischievous deed are we going to do? After thinking a bit, Rob said, I didn't think about it yet, what do you guys want to do? John said hesitantly, we can explore the crypt. I said, it could be fun. I have a better idea, let's call Sansa, Arya and Bran too, said Rob with a mischievous grin. Why, what are you planning? You usually don't want Sansa anywhere near you when you are being naughty. Because it won't be that big of a mischief, and it's going to be worth it even if Sansa reports me to Mom. This is what we are going to do. After a while, we went down the stairs to the crypt with all the Stark children except John, and Rob was telling the others a horror story about the crypt. When we reached the end of the stairs, we were greeted by dark corridors with no light but the dim glow of some torches. The Stark kids really love playing here, and I love exploring this place, too. This crypt is a vast place and must be more extensive than Winterfell. The corridors connecting most of it are buried under tons of dirt, and comparing all of it to the parts we can currently get into is like a drop in the bucket. As we were walking through the dimly lit corridors, something white suddenly passed at the end of the corridor in front of us, and Sansa screamed when she saw it. Hearing Sansa, Bran started to scream too, but Arya was curious as she couldn't see the white thing. What happened? What happened? Tell me what you saw. Sansa stopped screaming after a few seconds and replied to Arya, pointing ahead. I think I saw a ghost, something all white passed at the end of the hall. Meanwhile, Rob broke in and said, don't be ridiculous, there is no such thing as a ghost, it was just a story. Then he pretended to think a little and continued. But maybe it's a White Walker like the ones in old Nan's stories who came to kidnap us and turn us into themselves. We came to the end of the corridor in curiosity and fear. Meanwhile, Arya tried to pick up one of the swords on the tombs, but she couldn't carry it because it was too heavy and gave up. We were just turning the corner when something white came out from behind the tomb on the side and jumped in front of us. Rar, blood. Kai. Ah! Sansa and Bran screamed and tried to flee, but after a moment of fright, Arya realized it was Jon and stopped running. Rob and I were on the floor laughing, then Sansa and Bran saw this and stopped running. Then Sansa came towards us with her hands on her hips and started hitting Rob. You guys are assholes. How could you do this? Mother will hear of this. Ah. Sansa, stop it. You have to admit it, it was funny. Sansa angrily said, it was not funny. Of course, it was not funny for you, but it was hilarious for us. After Sansa's anger wore off, we started walking around the crypt and playing games. It would be normal to think that children would be afraid to enter here, but the atmosphere of this place looks pretty different to me than other cemeteries. We like playing in here. Yes, it's cold and dim and somewhat damp inside. But this cold is not a cutting cold like the outside. Even cold would be the wrong word to describe the feel of this place. What would be the right word to describe this feeling? Refreshingly cool would be the right word. The cool air inside is welcoming and like embracing me. I feel it is almost like calling me to stay here. Maybe it is because of the magic inside, I can feel it too. It permeated the walls and the ground, it is ancient magic. It is so old that it has almost lost all of its shape and effect. The core of this magic is either damaged or running out of mana. Comment. 7. Comment. Vote. Chapter 57, Chapter 57. A/N. If you want to donate or read up to 20 chapters ahead, you can visit my Patreon/Kurowashi. If you see grammar errors, please let me know so I can fix it, and I'm always open to constructive criticism. I would like it if you guys leave some reviews. Thank you for your good words and support. Chapter 57. It's been about a moon since we've been to the crypt, and this moon has been pretty quiet, not counting the fact that some nights I wake up drenched in cold sweat from nightmares. But these nightmares about dying and killing are getting less and less every day because I have to get used to it. On this planet, you're either the prey or the hunter. Unfortunately, there's no middle ground, and my mana meditation helped immensely. I discovered one more of the healing effects of mana. I already knew that it could heal physical injuries, but thanks to these nightmares, I realized that it also affects mental peace. All I had to do was focus the mana circulation on my brain. Thanks to the Menenvita, nourish and strengthen the body, spell, the fracture in my right hand healed in less than 2 weeks, but I pretended to be injured for a moon so as not to make Maester Luwin suspicious. Tonight, I awoke from one of these nightmares, opened my room window to freshen up, and looked out at Winterfell in the dark of night. Because we were inside the keep, there weren't many buildings around us except for the small wooden few-story buildings where the servants and their families stayed. Of course, around us, I could see bigger stone buildings like the Maester's turret, library tower, or bell tower, and I can see the inner keep and its walls. In some buildings, there are dim candle lights. But most of the city is in darkness. Of course, there are some light poles with candles inside of them, but their light is so dim, and there are so few of them. It doesn't do much on this moonless and cloudy night. I was lost while watching the view from the window. At that moment, I felt a pull from the north. It was as if someone had grabbed my hand and gently pulled me in that direction. I got dressed and started walking towards this feeling. This feeling grew stronger with every step I took in that direction. It came and went in waves like a heartbeat, and at last, I could clearly feel where it was coming from. It was coming from the Weirwood tree. The moment I stepped into God's wood, the pull got stronger. No, it would be wrong to calling it a pull, it wasn't a pull. Now I could feel it more clearly. It was a mana wave, and I think this wave has always been there, but my antenna wasn't strong enough to detect it, so I was just starting to feel it. Beginning at God's wood, it was spreading in waves in all directions. When I approached the Weirwood tree, I could feel these waves much more clearly. It was like a heartbeat, constant and robust. I couldn't help myself, I was in a trance and touched the Weirwood tree. As soon as my hand touched the tree, I lost myself. It was like a dream, I became one with the tree. I could sense every part of it. I could feel its crimson leaves swaying in the night's cool breeze, its strong trunk, and all of its roots. It felt like the roots were stretching into eternity. The thing that surprised me the most was the roots of the tree. It really felt like it stretched into eternity, and it was like the roots were stretching out for hundreds of kilometers. I dived deeper into the tree and started to follow its roots, but at the same time, I could feel my mana running out fast. A few minutes later, I felt the presence of another tree and followed the roots of that tree. When I reached this tree, everything gave way to a blinding light for a moment, and after a few seconds, darkness came again, but this time it wasn't pitch black like the roots, it was the darkness of night. I could make out some things in the environment out of this darkness. I was in the middle of the forest now, but this forest was not God's wood because there were no small paved paths around, and the trees were a bit different. Still, this place looked very familiar. I started to look around, and when I looked the other way, I was amazed by what I saw. I knew very well where I was. This was the Weirwood tree in the middle of Wolf's Wood. Because out in the darkness, I could see the hut that I created by bending the trees. Just at this moment, a feeling of powerlessness came over me, and my vision darkened for a moment, and then I found myself in God's wood again. My mana was wholly spent, and I was feeling exhausted, but these things I learned were worth every mana spent. Each of the weirwood trees were connected by a vast web. This means that if I have enough mana, I can connect to any weirwood tree on the continent. I realized a few more things with this connection, the most important of which was that the weirwood trees were all sealed. They were not currently spreading the magic they actually had. The magic circulating at this time was specks overflowing from the seal. The current shape was not the original shape of the weirwood trees either, and some of these trees had a conscious I could sense, but these conscious were in a deep sleep. The tree in God's wood had no conscious, but the one in Wolf's wood had one. But the tree in God's wood looked as if it was made of pure magic. When I sensed these conscious while in the weirwood, I sensed something else. I felt as if someone was watching me, but I couldn't understand where this feeling came from. Chapter 58. 284 AC. I had spent all my mana moving in the connection between the weirwood trees, but I could still sense the mana within these trees and began to better understand how these trees were created through rituals. At the heart of the existence of these trees were earth, air, water, and fire. I could understand earth and water, but I could not understand why the element of air, especially fire, was in these trees, and of course, there was blood sacrifice, too. A lot of life was sacrificed to make one tree. At this moment, the mana in the tree started to flow into me and completely surrounded me. My mana heart was overworking with a supreme effort to refine this mana and make it a part of me. I could sense my mana rising with each passing second. My breakthrough to level 3 Druid had begun, mana was swirling around me and was slowly entering my heart. After a few minutes, I had 120 mana, then I felt like an explosion had occurred inside me, and this mana created a second mana circle around my mana heart. I was drenched in sweat, and this breakthrough had tired me out so much, but both of these mana circles started to spin around my mana heart faster and continued to absorb mana from the environment. I couldn't breathe, my body was beginning to feel like an overinflated balloon, and I felt like I might burst at any moment. Just when I couldn't stand this pain, they stopped absorbing mana, and I could breathe again. All of my clothes were soaked, but now I was a level 3 Druid, and as always, information about spells started to flow into my head, but this time there was also something else. I now had the ability to do ritual magic. Ritual magic wasn't overpowered at the moment, like any skill the R.O.B gave me. This one had a weak start too. None of the rituals I could do now were permanent. I only have 3 rituals at the moment, and they are all temporary rituals. The first one allows me to purify water resources for a day, and I can cast once a week. So if I go to the source, I can purify a stream or a well. Second, I can create a 5 square meter healing circle for an hour per day, and anyone who enters this circle can get minor healing. Minor wounds of people who enter this area will heal immediately. It cannot heal internal organs and bones, but it has the ability to stop bleeding. The third is for curing minor diseases. I can't cure deadly diseases like red fever, but because I can reduce the fever with this, if the body is strong enough, it can slightly help them with a deadly disease and can cure a common cold too. This one lasts for an hour and can be cast 5 times daily. Since I upgraded to level 3, I now have 150 mana and got a few level 3 spells. I got a new healing spell, and this time it's a real healing spell. Metanvita, nourish and strengthen the body, is more of a boost and a cure disease spell than a healing one. This one is called Aberuklo, Life Bloom. Although this spell can heal minor wounds and hairline fractures, it cannot heal internal organs and broken bones, but it can stop bleeding and speed up healing if cast regularly. It costs 15 mana, and all the level 1 and level 2 spells now cost less than before. Level 1 spells cost 3 mana, and most level 2 spells cost 5 mana. Thanks to Abtedis, conjure animals, I can create animals of the same species as my familiars. With this spell, I can create 5 small or 2 medium, or 1 large size animal. So right now, I can spawn 5 snakes, 5 ravens, or 2 rottweilers, and since small animals can be spawned through my hand, this will be a very effective spell at close range. I could spawn 5 poisonous snakes and throw them at my enemies. Of course, they are not real animals but look like one and despawn after half an hour. Zagan Jelms, call lightning, summons lightning, as the name of this spell indicates, but there are 2 versions of this spell. In the first one, the lightning comes out of my hand, but the second version can make real lightning if the weather is stormy and we are outside. Mana cost will be half, but the power will be 3 times high because it is an actual bolt of lightning. It cost 15 mana. Figomorphous, shape-shifting, the Druid spell that I have been waiting for the most, has finally arrived. I can take the shapes of animals now, but this is not shape-shifting in the complete sense. This spell currently has many limitations. I can only transform into my familiar species, can't change mass and size, it means I can't turn into smaller or larger animals, and lastly, even when I shapeshift into a Rottweiler, I wouldn't have the body of a dog. It would still be my muscles and bones, meaning I wouldn't be as fast as a dog, or if I turned into a shark, I couldn't breathe underwater. But it would still be a functional scouting ability, nobody would spare a second look for a dog. Like most level 3 spells, it costs 15 mana. Tegan Impulse, Earth Shock, spell taking me as a center creates a concussive force explosion with a diameter of 10 meters, 33 feet, as a result of which everyone around me takes damage and is pushed back by the force. The Hebegumen, Plant Growth, spell isn't helpful to me at the moment, but it will be one of the spells that will be most useful to me in the future. This spell doubles the growth rate and yield of plants growing on the land within 2 kilometers of me. The downside is that I can only cast this spell once a week. When my mana circulation returned to normal, I stood up and made my way to my room. When I got to the front of the building, I could telepathically hear the apocalypse breaking inside. Poe, Erebus, and Varys were fighting. I ran upstairs, and the scene shocked me when I opened the door. Chapter 59. When I entered the room, my 4 familiars were there. Imma was lying quietly on my bed, but the other 3 were tangled up in each other. What shocked me was the size of them all. Just yesterday, Poe was 70 centimeters, 2.5 feet, Erebus was 1 meter, 3.3 feet, and Varys was 70 centimeters from head to toe. At this time, Poe was 1 meter, Erebus 1.3 meters, 4.3 feet, and Varys 90 centimeters. I approached the bed, and when I checked Immo too, I noticed that he had grown 30 centimeters too. Meanwhile, Immo turned his head towards me and said, "Master, I'm staying here nicely, but the others are always misbehaving." I got another shock when I heard Immo speaking. Immo was able to use well-expressed sentences rather than broken ones. I took a deep breath. I must calm the others first. "Boys, break it up right now. What's going on here? Somebody tell me right away. Why are you fighting?" All of them kept staring at me in silence. I looked over at Poe and gestured for her to tell me. "Daddy, we were all asleep, but all of a sudden, mana started to fill me up, and I woke up in pain from sleep. Within a few minutes, I started growing, while the same thing was happening to the others." Erebus fell on top of Varys from where he stood and accidentally got his talons on Varys's back. Meanwhile, Varys came to me and said, "Master, Erebus hurt my back, and it hurts a lot. Look, look. My back is bleeding." He turned towards Erebus and began to growl. Varys was able to talk in complete sentences too. "I didn't do it on purpose. Stop crying, you crybaby." When I looked at Varys' back, there was a really deep cut, and he was bleeding. When I looked at the talons of Erebus, one was covered in blood, and each was about 6 to 7 centimeters, 2.5 inches. It looked as if he had 4 small knives on each foot. To calm Varys, I started stroking his head, and he started rubbing against my leg, making crying noises. Technically he is still a baby, he isn't even 1 year old yet. Aberuklo, Life Bloom. The moment I cast the spell, the bleeding wound on Varys' back was slowly but visibly closing, and after a few minutes, there were no traces left of the wound. There wasn't even a scar, it was like the wound was never there. "Master! My wound is healed, is that what Poe calls mana?" I turned to Erebus and said. "You may have hurt Varys by mistake, Erebus, but when you did that, you should have apologized. You are friends and even brothers, so you shouldn't fight like that. I'm telling this to you all, be nice to each other." After I had calmed them all down, I sat on the bed, and at that moment, it dawned on me that they were all already large animals among their kind anyway and had grown bigger. Varys was the runt of the litter, his brothers and sisters were only 50 to 60 centimeters from head to toe. As the runt, he becomes bigger than most adult Rottweilers in the kennels. After seeing them, Sir Rodrik is going to nag me about being a warg. What should I do? After some thought, I decided to take all my familiars to Wolfswood. I decided to set up a small base near the Weirwood tree in the center of Wolfswood. Right now, it is 2 a.m., and I have to wait until morning. The castle gates are either locked or held by guards. But I could sneak out of the castle using the Figomorphous, shape-shifting, spell. Even if I could get out of the castle, another problem exists. I did not get permission to stay outside. It takes me about 2 days to reach Wolfsud's Weirwood tree, and it would take other people 5 or 6 days to reach there. Thanks to the Anani's Motu, traceless movement, I can gallop through the forests without any problem, and the forest will give me a smooth path. The distance between Winterfell and the forest's center is about 300 kilometers, 186 miles. Now I had to ask myself whether I wanted to go without permission and get punished later, or I could wait until morning and get permission to go. Sir Rodrik usually lets me camp for a week before I take care of the bandits. It would be best not to hurt the relationships I've built all this time for such tiny things. I may need these goodwills later. Figomorphous, shape-shifting. When I cast the spell, I felt dizzy for a moment and stumbled a bit, but it passed quickly. My body was changing shape, but I didn't feel anything. I literally didn't feel a thing. It was like my whole body was paralyzed. I couldn't move or even feel the chair under my hands. I had completely lost my sense of touch. This paralysis made me feel claustrophobic, but a few minutes later, I was a Barris-sized Rottweiler, and feeling my sense of touch come back calmed me down. I didn't feel any difference was different other than my field of vision, but when I tried to move, I felt a big difference. A dog does not move like a human, and I didn't have the muscle memory or musculature of a dog. Yes, my bones and muscles had changed shape to that of a dog, but there was no change functionally. After trying to walk around the room for a few minutes, I had no trouble walking slowly anymore, but running still looked impossible. Poe and Erebus followed us from the air, carrying Imu as Barris and I walked towards one of the open castle gates. Poe and Erebus followed us from the air while carrying Imu as Barris and I walked towards one of the open castle gates. Walking down the road, I thought the snow-covered roads would be very cold, like stepping on the ice barefoot. But it wasn't like that at all. Yes, I did feel a little cold, but it wasn't anything bothersome. As we approached the gate, I could hear the conversation between the gatekeepers. Naturally, both gatekeepers were looking outwards, and as we approached very quietly, they only noticed us once we passed them and went outside. One of the guards shouted in fright. "What the hell? You mutt scared the shit out of me." He lifted his spear shaft and was ready to strike us when the guard beside him stopped him. "Can't you see how big and well-fed these dogs are? They must have escaped the kennels. You want to hurt them and get in trouble." The guard thought for a moment and lowered his spear. "So what shall we do, catch them?" The older watchman sighed and said. "Are you an idiot? Do you want to wrestle with dogs in this cold? Let them go. If they're trained dogs, they will come back, but if they don't, it's not our problem." Chapter 60. After getting farther from town, we stopped in a wooded area. "Everyone, wait for me here and stay away from people. Try not to attract attention. I'll return to you after the morning. Until then, everyone will listen to Poe while I'm gone. She is in charge. Does everyone understand this?" I returned to the city without any problems, and when I entered my room, then thought of turning back to myself. Again, I lost all sense of touch for a while, but it came back when the transformation was complete. Does this happen because transforming is an excruciating process? It makes sense that all of my bones and muscles are changing form. Then I realized something astonishing. I wasn't naked after I became human again. My clothes were on me without any damage. It's fascinating. I wonder where my clothes go when I transform. I decided to rest for a few more hours until morning and fell asleep. As soon as I awoke, I went to Sir Rodrik's house and waited in front of his house. Half an hour later, Sir Rodrik left the house and saw me. "What happened? Did you see me in your dream? What are you doing here at the crack of dawn?" "Sir, I want to go camping again." "No." I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I started chanting in my head. "Don't be an edgelord, don't be an edgelord. This is not a Chinese novel, there is no need to do face slapping. Be calm, and don't throw a tantrum like a child. He will treat me like a child if I act irresponsibly and immaturely. Sir, I must have proven it when I've dealt with so many bandits, I'm not like the other kids. I have only one place I can feel free and relaxed, and that is when I'm camping and hunting in the woods. If I ever thought for a second that I was in danger, I wouldn't have intervened, and no bandit group would ever sneak up on me. Why they can't ambush you? Thanks to Poe and Erebus, I trained them to be scouts. They always circle me when I'm out, and when they see a person, they come over to my shoulder and point in which direction they are. I found the bandits from last time, thanks to them. How can you teach animals to do so many things? I don't know, I have a talent for this kind of thing. It was very challenging, and it took me 3 years to teach it, but I did. Can I please go, sir? He put one hand on his neck and the other on the hilt of his sword and began to think while scratching his neck. He sighed heavily and said, "Okay, you can go, but only for a week." After getting my permission, I left the castle immediately and met with my familiars. When I get close, they come out of the woods. It will take us about 2 days to get to the Weirwood tree of Wolfswood, and it will take me 2 days to come back. 4 days of my 7 days are wasted. I need to find a way to make this trip shorter, but how? One of the biggest reasons why the journey takes so long is the horses. Even though I want to continue on the road, I have to take a break because the horse needs to rest. Westeros horses can travel approximately 55 to 65 kilometers, 34 to 40 miles, daily. I don't think Earth's horses were able to run for that long. But I need them faster, or need them to run longer, or need something with better speed or stamina. When I thought about that, it was like lightning bolts struck my head. I'm an idiot. Why didn't I think about this before? I need something with better speed or stamina, so why should I search for it while I can give things better speed and stamina? I slapped my head for being this stupid. I just have to dominate the horse and then buff it with speed and stamina buffs. Speed buff wouldn't do that much because horses, on average, have 30 to 40 speeds. 2.5 from the buff is a small effect, but the stamina buff is different. This buff doesn't add, it multiplies by 4, with this, on paper, I can travel all the way to the Weirwood tree in 12 hours. So, I dominate the horse, buff it with both buffs, and get on the road. Of course, I buffed my familiars too. Such distance in a day would be impossible for Poe and Varys. But our musclehead can do that much distance in a day without buffs. When we reached the Wolf's Wood, I had to slow down because, in the woods, my running and the horse's running were not the same. With Inanni's Motu, traceless movement, spell, I can make a path in the woods, but it is a bit slow for a horse's max speed, hence the slowing down. By the time I reached the Weirwood tree, it had already been 14 hours. It was a long journey, and we were tired, so I got into my hut and slept for a while. After taking a nap, I got to work and started to surround my hut with trees in a large area using Formohba, mold plants, spells so that when I returned to town, Varys would be safe. I just need him to stay here for a few moons. After that, it will not be that weird for him to be this size. It took me 4 days to shape the trees and build my wall, but I finally finished it. There was still 1 day before I had to return, and I wanted to use this day to gain combat experience. It's time to face my fear. I closed my eyes and entered the training space with my familiars. Chapter 61. We were all in the middle of this big white room. I started checking every direction, and when I saw that no one was trying to attack me, I began to calm down. I remembered that I changed the room settings now that the enemy would not appear unless I spawned them. Now everyone, listen to me. In this room, there are going to be enemies that are going to attack us. I want you guys to attack them and try to kill them. But Daddy, you always said we shouldn't hurt humans if they are not trying to hurt us. Yes, that is true, Poe, but like the ones I killed a moon ago, there are bad humans, so we need to learn how to protect ourselves. Don't worry, the things inside this room may look like a human, but they are not. Varys, while wagging his tail, said. So, can we fight them all we want? I could feel his excitement, so I smiled and said. Yes, but don't forget they can hurt you too. Like how Erebus hurt you yesterday, but in this room, we cannot die. It would hurt really badly, but then we will heal right away when we leave or die inside the room. Imu got out of the neck of my shirt and said. Master, can I fight too? Okay, you can bite them when I'm in close combat. I spawned one enemy and ordered it to defend only. Erebus was the first to attack, he took off and dived quickly, but the dummy swept him aside with the spear in his hand. Just then, the others joined the fight. While Poe and Erebus were busying him, Varys came from the side and bit his leg. Dummy didn't really care as he didn't feel any pain. This is the only thing I hate about these dummies. They don't feel pain and are like zombies. The last time I couldn't open the pain option, it was locked, but I just leveled up, maybe I could change it now. So, I crouched and touched the ground. Willed to change the pain option, and it changed. After I leveled up, it must have unlocked, as I thought. As soon as I changed the setting, the dummy screamed in pain and stumbled. His whole attention was focused on Barris, and he struck Barris in the face with the butt of the shaft to save his leg. It would do a defensive strike, but he will not make a follow-up attack in a defensive mode. When the dummy hit Barris in the face, Barris started squealing in pain, ran away from the dummy, and came right up to me. His face was covered in blood because his eyebrows had burst. Stop! When I gave this order, the dummy froze, then Erebus and Poe started flying toward me. Master, it hurts so much. I don't like it, and this game is not fun at all. Barris, this isn't a game. We're learning to fight here. I just told you that if they hit you, you'll get hurt and even mortally wounded. Barris still counts as a pup since he's only 7 moons old, and he doesn't like doing anything he considers not fun. I don't want to push them that hard from day one as this is just the first training. What do you two want to do, go no go? Which is it? I want to fight. He must still be angry because he could hit the dummy once and only got hit. Ravens are vengeful animals, indeed. Does it not hurt? It does, but I'm not a crybaby like Barris. I thought if he had a human face, he might be smirking at Barris right now. Barris started growling and said, I'm not a crybaby, I just don't want to do it. You just cried. Both of you knock it off, for now, if he doesn't want to fight, he doesn't have to, but Barris, you have to learn how to fight. This is not a peaceful world. If you see your enemy going to attack, you don't push ahead blindly. In that instance, you could have dodged the attack when he raised his spear, but you bullheadedly continued to bite him. You don't need to take down your enemy in one hit all the time. If you can take them down in one hit, it would be good, but if you can't, just get out and strike again. Barris, you go to the side of the room and wait. You should carefully observe us while we fight. I turned to the dummy and said, continue to fight. Erebus and Poe had good coordination, perhaps because they hunted their own food. They used to eat grain, too, when they were the size of a usual raven, but after they passed half a meter, they became entirely carnivorous and had been hunting for the last 2 years. So, they might see this not as a game but as a hunt. Since they have hunting experience, they attack in a coordinated way. While one of them attracts the attention of the dummy, the other attacks, and they are usually patient with their attacks. Erebus attacks a little more fearlessly, while Poe acts more cautiously. Stop! Kids, he is guessing what you are going to do now because you are constantly trying to attack his eyes. You're not hunting a rabbit or a mouse right now, you have to change the focus of your attacks sometimes, and that change should sometimes be at the last second. This way, you can take your enemy by surprise. Yes, their face is a human's weak spot, and reflexively, when something comes close to our face, we flinch, but if every attack comes here, it will be easy to defend. Daddy, where should we attack then? For example, you can attack the back of the head, this is a blind spot, and if you can land a solid peck here, you can cause your opponent to stagger or pass out. Another point is that you should no longer fight like a usual raven. Your most powerful weapon is no longer your beak but your talons. You have 4 small blades like talons on each foot, learn to use them effectively. I went over to the dummy and pointed to the sides of his neck. Here, there are jugular veins, this applies to all animals. If you can cut these veins with your talons, your enemy will surely die. Of course, it's easier to kill humans this way than other animals because we don't have thick skin like other animals, and one last thing, when I said that your talons are your strongest weapon, that doesn't mean your beak is weak. You both have a beak about 15 centimeters. It is as deadly as a giant arrow but not as versatile as your talons. This time, try attacking different places and change up your attacking pattern too. For example, act like you are going for a peck but change it to a talon slash at the last second or do fake dive to divert his attention. Chapter 62. While Poe and Erebus were trying different attack strategies, I decided to spawn a dummy for myself. Spawn 1 dummy, only aggressive towards me, use 70% speed. As soon as I spawned the dummy, it started attacking me, and he had 7 STR and 5 SPD. I was a little used to spar matches with grown UPS, but as I understand from my deaths here, practice and real fights to the death will never be the same. I wanted to gain combat experience, but I still didn't want to be hurt like before. The fear of death was still with me. I knew clearly that nothing would happen to me and that I would not die, but that pain was coming from a profound place. I needed to increase my pain tolerance over time, and there was no way I could dive in right away. Until 4 years ago, I lived in peace in the modern world. At the moment, I had killed 12 people and tasted death 3 times. Yes, 2 were not actual deaths, but they were more terrible and painful than my real death. We all trained here for 6 hours, in those 6 hours, I had dozens of cuts at the skin level. It hurts like crazy, but I also killed the dummy dozens of times. Since his speed was almost equal to mine and he was on his own, I gave him my complete focus and worked mainly on my dodge and parry. The most injured among us was not me but R.O.B. 2 of his talons were broken, his beak cracked, and he couldn't entirely fold his right wing, but thanks to our bond, I could clearly sense the anger and the will to fight in him. Whereas from his labored breathing, it was apparent he didn't have any energy left in him. It was like he was burning up with a vengeance. If he had the power, he would rip the dummy apart. When I saw him this way, berserker rage came to my mind. He was like a bull, always charging while disregarding defense. Poe was the least injured among us because, after my warnings, she chose to attack only from the blind spot. Unless R.O.B kept the dummy busy, she never attacked and always awaited an opening. When I saw her behavior, I thought of an assassin. Her fighting style was being cautious and patient. They only managed to kill the dummy 2 times, and both were her kills. This was one of the reasons for R.O.B's will to fight. He couldn't kill the dummy once. Our wounds and injuries healed when we got out of the training space. Daddy, it doesn't hurt anymore, R.O.B's talons and beak aren't broken too. Yes, when we leave that space, we will heal because the wounds we got in that room are not real. At that moment, R.O.B said, but it hurt like it was real. Because that is the magic of that place. It makes you feel like you are hurt or dying. After returning to Winterfell, I made a decision. I wanted to explore the north, I didn't want to return to Winterfell. It felt like a waste of time now. Thanks to my magic, travel time was significantly reduced, but I would still be wasting 2 days every round trip. It was close to sunset when I reached Winterfell, but Sir Rodrik must still be in his quarter, so I wasted no time heading towards Sir Rodrik's quarter. I knocked on the door. Come in. Sir Rodrik was sitting at his desk examining documents when I entered the room, and seeing it was me, he put the papers down and smiled. How was your camping and hunting trip? It was good, and I enjoyed it. I want to tell you something, but you're not going to like it, sir. Then why are you telling it? Because I have to do that. You have to do what? Explore the north. Hearing what I said, he angrily slammed his fist on the table and jumped to his feet. What the hell are you saying, boy? I have to explore the north, and I feel like I can't grow anymore if I stay at Winterfell. No, you are too young, you can't go. Sir, do you think you have left anything to teach me, or do you think I can learn anything else from our safe spar in the training ground? Then we can talk to the Lord and arrange for you to go on patrols with the other knights. Yes, it might bring me little benefit if we encounter bandits, but it would be like walking with chains while I could run. Sir Rodrik might look like someone with a bull-headed personality, but sometimes he can act with logic, and this one is of these moments. He was able to see the merit of my words. Still, he was acting bull-headed now. No, can't allow that, you are too young. It would be too dangerous. What would be dangerous, sir? Lord Stark, you and I perfectly know I will become one of the best swordsmen this world has ever seen. As you said, you will become one, you are not that person yet. Until then, it is my responsibility to protect you. Sir, I can't become that kind of person in a golden cage, and in my humble opinion, your job is not to keep me safe. On the contrary, it is your job to push me. When I said this, he stopped talking for a moment and thought about what I said, and I think I started to go through to him. You and being humble, I have learned a new thing today. POV Rodrik. The kid had a point, but he was too young. How could I allow someone so young to go on a journey alone? But on the other hand, if we want him to reach his full potential, he needs to experience hardship. What should I do? Should I take him to the Lord or just refuse him? You are still too young, we will visit this topic after a few more years. I could see he was getting angry. Sir, can I talk to you openly? Look at the balls of this kid. The calf really isn't afraid of the wolf. Talk. This is not right, I repeatedly proved I'm not a naive kid. How many times do I need to prove myself for you to take me seriously? I have killed 12 bandits. Can you tell me any other squires or knight that did this when they were 10 name days old? I was stunned by this outburst, but the more we spoke, the more sense he made. Yes, you are not a naive little kid. That is why I'm allowing you to speak to me like that. And like you said, we know you are going to accomplish great things in your life, but all of this is only possible if you live. It is too dangerous for you to travel for now. Then let's do this, give me a test in the wild, let me do a mock battle against 10 number 20 knights. But the knights cannot be from household guards. I was starting to get really angry now. This was not childish but a blatant disrespect against the knights. Boy, you are going too far with your blind arrogance. It would be arrogance if I couldn't back up my claim. Yes, I could only fight one knight if it was a melee, but if it is a fight in the wild and they are trying to ambush me, I could hunt at least half of them before they could even find me. Chapter 63. POV Rodrik. What he said really made sense. What 10-year-old boy would dare to camp alone in the woods, let alone kill 12 bandits? If he lived through a few years of hardship, it would boost his development significantly. But I was not too fond of him underestimating the knights. This wasn't a decision I could make on my own. It made sense to test him. If he doesn't pass this test, we'll be closing this issue. If he passes the test, we can let him explore comfortably, but I must discuss this with the Lord first. When I entered the Lord's solar, I saw him drowning in paperwork. When he realized it was me, he lifted his head from the papers and said, "Rodrik, have you come to save me from these papers? Please tell me the wildlings have crossed the wall, and we must go to war immediately, right? I'm sorry, my lord, but I need to consult you on an important matter, so I need some time. Whatever it is welcomed as long as it takes me away from these wretched papers, at least for some time. My lord, R.O.B requests permission to explore the north." Lord Stark's smiling face suddenly turned serious. "Of course, we will refuse. I don't think he will accept that," and he made a compelling argument to me. What did he say? "My lord, you know that R.O.B is not a normal boy, and I expected such a request from him, but not so soon. I thought he would ask this when he is 4 and 10 name days old, and he said you could not grow a fierce eagle in a golden cage." The Lord paused for a few minutes, then said, "As you said, he is too young, tell him to ask this when he is 4 and 10 name days old." I told him that, but he made a better counter-argument. "What is it this time?" He reminded me. He regularly camps in the Wolf's Wood by himself and hunted down 12 bandits with nothing but a bow and arrows. The first few times, I even sent our best hunters and trackers after him, so they could keep him safe from a distance, but the outcome was the same every time. The second he steps into the forest, he disappears, none of them can track him. Even though they are faster than him in the open, they cannot follow his speed in the forest. They say it is like fish getting into the water, or some of them call him forest spirit. He even told me to test him with 20 knights. What? That boy become too arrogant too fast. He needs a lesson on how dangerous this world really is. 20 knights, haha. This boy. My lord, he doesn't mean he will fight them in a melee, he wants us to try and ambush him in the woods like bandits and claims he cannot be ambushed with ordinary ways. That is arrogant too. Very well, we will give him a test, call your son. My lord, he doesn't want to fight against household guards. He knows those knights are too strong for him. He wants to fight against young knights, and I think it is the proper opponent, too. If we send him, he is not going to encounter an army. He is going to fight against bandit groups. Call for him, I want to talk to him." "Yes, my lord." POV Ned Stark. "You call for me, my lord." "Yes, R.O.B. Rodrik told me what you want, and I'm inclined not to give my permission. My lord, please stop treating me like a naive little boy." "Yes, I know I'm a child. But we all know I'm not normal. I learned everything Winterfell has to offer, and I have to travel to develop more. Suppose I continue to stay here under your protection. I will go stagnant if I want to grow more powerful. What I need is a challenge, not protection." After listening to his words, I got shaken a bit, and I looked him in the eye with great focus and then took a deep breath. This boy, every time we talk, I can't win against him. He is like a force of nature, unbreakable, untamable, and every time wears me down with his answers. What is your hurry? If you asked for this 3 or 4 years later, I would have granted it without thought, but no, you are too young. Yes, I know you are strong, and I bet you can beat most grown UPS in a sword fight. But I still think this is still too early. If I gave you this permission and you got hurt or worse, I would feel like I betrayed the North. My lord, I don't even want to waste one day of my life in stagnation. To me, 3 or 4 years that I'm going to spend here without doing anything would feel like 15 or 20 years. I don't understand him. It feels like I'm talking to an old man, not a 10-name-day boy. He has the wanderlust of a little boy that wants to discover everything in his home but at the same time has the logic of a wise old man. He is a giant conundrum. I cannot deny I want to see if he can win against 20 knights in an ambush. Will you tell me how it is possible you cannot be ambushed? Like I explained to Sir Rodrik, if I'm out in the open, nobody will be able to ambush me, thanks to my ravens. They will always warn me if a human gets close to me. Your ravens, how? I was confused, how could a raven tell something like that? I have trained them always to circle me when we are out in the wild. So, when they see a human, it is very easy for them to spot humans when they are flying, and the enemy has no idea they are being watched. After spotting someone, they will come to me and perch on my shoulder, then point in the direction they will be coming so I will always know if someone is getting close. This way can decide if I'm going to fight or flight. I was shocked. How can you train an animal like that? How is that possible? How do maesters train ravens to travel from one point to another? I do the same with years of patience and a little bit of talent. Chapter 64. Everyone was getting ready to go to Wolfswood. I went to Lord Solar to speak with Lord Stark and Sir Rodrik. My lord, I have come to discuss something with you. Come on, Airmer, what is it you want? My lord, I ask you not to inform the knights of my ravens. Why? If they don't know that, you have a great advantage. My lord, anyone I meet in the outside world will not know anything about my ravens. If you see a raven on tree branches or in the air, will you turn and look again? No one will notice. Okay, you are right. We won't tell them. But we need to level the playing field a bit. Then you will get lesser arrows, and you need to make them count. Yes, my lord. And I want to see these famous ravens. Could you show them to me? If we open the balcony, I can call them in with a whistle. I opened the balcony door and whistled. 2 ravens came through the door a few seconds later and landed on my shoulder. Didn't your ravens have white feathers on their foreheads and wings? Asked Sir Rodrik. Yes, it used to be, but those feathers fell out when they got older. These 2 ravens weren't Poe and Erebus, of course. If Sir Rodrik had seen their present size, he would have mistaken them for monsters. The last time the people of Winterfell saw them, they were 70 to 80 centimeters in size. These 2 ravens were 60 to 70 centimeters in size. Sir Rodrik didn't quite understand the difference, for he wasn't very interested in my ravens. These 2 ravens were the biggest I could find in the murder of Poe and Erebus. Lord Stark approached me. I'd say these are the biggest ravens I've ever seen. I think it's fair to say you are much better at training and breeding ravens than Maester Luwin. The next day Lord Stark, Sir Rodrik, myself, and many other knights went to Wolfswood. Sir Rodrik came close to me and said, "As you wish, 20 young knights will come into the forest behind you and try to ambush you. The Lord and I will follow them from a short distance and watch what happens." Then he turned and started to check the weapons we were going to use. I don't want anyone seriously injured, this is a mock battle. Some of you may get injured, and accidents may happen, but be careful. If you break anything, I will kill you. All the knights started to laugh. Then he continued. All of you are going to use blunt steel swords and cloth-tipped arrows, so be careful and show this brat he has a long way to compete against you lot. All the knights raised their swords and cheered, "Aye aye." He turned to me and said, "As for you, you will get 25 arrows, and what do you want for the close range?" I don't think I'm going to need something for close range, but it is better to be safe than sorry. I will get a sword and a dagger. You can go in when ready, they will come after you after the sands run out in this hourglass. The hourglass he holds is not that big, I think it will last around 5 minutes. I started running towards the forest with all my might. When I got away from them a little bit, I used the Valhen Kelly, aspect of cat, and Nani's Motu, traceless movement, buffs. I didn't need the strength buff for now, but I needed to move quickly and without leaving a trace. After running for about 5 minutes, I crouched behind a bush of tall grass. Now that we started to enter the winter, the forest was freezing cold, but there was not that much snow on the ground because the snow season had not come yet. I could clearly see the steam that formed with every breath I took. Promodines, Locate animals, human. As soon as I cast the spell, I could clearly feel the locations of all the people moving towards me and their distance from me, and thanks to the traceless movement, they will not find any trace of me. They were all advancing blindly in a wide formation. Sir Rodrik thinks I'm underestimating the knights, but I'm the one being underestimated. There is no other explanation for approaching me with such a ridiculous formation. They were all in a big misunderstanding. They were not the hunter here, I was the real hunter, and I had 20 rabbits to hunt. Promodines, locate animals, spell had grown stronger with my level up. Now I can sense up to 3 kilometers, and the buff lasts an hour. After making a little plan in my head, I started to flank them from the left side. There were around 100 meters between us, none of them able to see me from this distance in the forest, but thanks to my augmented eyesight, I could see them like they were right next to me. Valhen Tor, aspect of ox, Valhen Grives, aspect of bear, Iludo Gelmio, warding wind. After getting fully buffed, I started to get close to them. If I had regular arrows, I could hit them from 70 to 80 meters, but because it is cloth-tipped, this cuts the range to almost half. If this was before the level up, I had to get close to 30 to 40 meters, but thanks to the level up, my elemental control is heightened. Now I can use wind element to boost my arrow range. I still can't put mana into my arrows, but I can add some range by creating a wind tunnel in front of me. There are two drawbacks to this wind control: its duration is too low and lasts only a few minutes. The second drawback is I can only do it when I'm stationary. For 2 mana, I'm getting close to a 20-meter range buff. I think it is worth it. I get as close as 60 meters, pull 3 arrows from my quiver, and fire one after another. 2 hit the mark, but the last one missed the target. He is here on the right side, 2 down. We need help. Knights started raining orders to each other and began to encircle me. Of course, I'm not going to let them. Right away, I started running like hell and got out of there. They try to follow me, but the distance between us keeps growing. One of the biggest reasons they can't catch me is the plants and roots sticking out of the ground. They can trip and fall because of them, but I can't. When I get close to a root, it buries itself into the ground. When I get close to tall grass, they part and create a path for me. I love being a druid. After 10 minutes of chasing, they got tired and stopped coming after me. Of course, I'm not going to let them rest easy. I flanked them one more time when they were trying to catch their breath. POV Tom Hall, KNGHT. How is he that fast? He runs like a rabbit. If I catch that brat, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. Just shut up and rest a bit. We need to chase after him, so others can flank him while we keep him busy. Please, he was just lucky, we will get him next time. Why are they underestimating him so much? If this were a real fight, he would have killed 2 of us so quickly without any problem, and if I didn't trip, I would have gotten hit by the last arrow. I got up and said, "Why are you underestimating him so much? My cousin is the best scout and the tracker in Winterfell, and Sir Rodrik sent him to track and keep Airmer safe before, but the second they stepped foot into the forest, he lost track of him. Does this sound familiar to you all? We are not the hunters here, you idiots. We are the prey, and he is hunting us. We must start taking this seriously, or we will lose to a 10-name-day-old child. Buddy, why are you so serious? Relax, we will get him." The second he stopped talking, an arrow hit him right on his forehead. Damn it! I was not lucky this time and got hit in the chest too. He is going to eat all of us as snacks. Chapter 65. I downed 2 more, 16 remaining, and this time, I wasn't going to run away yet. I let them get close to me while pretending to run so they wouldn't know I was planning something. 5 of them were right after me, and the others were trying to surround me to block my way. I allowed the distance between us to shorten to 20 meters, and at this time, I cast the Sambrar, fog cloud, spell and, at the same time, threw 2 smoke bombs so that they would think the source of the fog was the bombs. As soon as a 20-meter smoke screen surrounded me, I changed my position and started running toward the 5 knights while shooting arrows at them one after the other. I shot 5 arrows, but I could only hit 3 of them because they were moving very erratically. After all, they were blinded. I decided not to waste more arrows and quietly approached the remaining 2. I came from behind one of the knights and struck his right leg from behind with my sword. He cried out in pain, and the moment he fell to one knee, I promptly struck him on the neck with the pommel, knocking him unconscious. The other one in the fog heard his friend's cry of pain and came towards the direction the voice had come from, but I had already disappeared into the fog. As the flanking knights saw their plans backfire, they began to rush toward the fog, but they were at least 20 meters away, and I was already done. Not wanting to linger any longer, I prepared a tegan, earth ball, half the size of my fist and shot the last knight right in the helm through the fog. As the stone touched the helmet, there was a very loud ding, and the knight made a muffled sound and fell to the ground. When the remaining knights arrived, I was already 20 meters away and disappearing among the trees, but I could feel people about 10 meters away. These must be Lord Stark and Sir Rodrik's group, and I continued running toward them without hesitation. POV Ned Stark. We were about 20 or 30 meters from the fight, and from an elevated position, we could clearly see what was going on until the smoke grenade went off, but what I saw was not a fight but a one-sided massacre. Aylmer was hunting my knights one by one like ducks. At that moment, I saw Aylmer emerge from the fog and head toward us. He quickly approached me and said, "My lord, 9 down 11 to go. If you don't mind, I'm in need of this high ground." He was smiling, he wasn't in a hurry, or he wasn't anxious. If I had to describe him with a few words, I would say he is having fun. He had been running non-stop for the last 20 or 30 minutes, but he wasn't even breathing heavily. He was breathing so calmly that you would think he was having a pleasant stroll in the forest. He got right next to us and began to wait for the knights. The remaining knights were shouting in confusion, and we couldn't quite understand what they were saying. But it was clear as a day that they were not happy. Aylmer was already aiming towards them when they emerged from the fog, but how does he plan to hit them from 30 to 40 meters away with cloth-tipped arrows? He'll be wasting his arrows right now, he should have waited for them to get closer. I've never seen arrows held the way he does. The hand with which he drew the arrow had an arrow between each finger, so apart from the arrow he knocked into the bow, he had 3 more arrows between his fingers. Just as he was about to start shooting, he whispered something, and a strong wind began to blow toward the knights, and he sent arrows one after another, but I had never seen such a fast shooting, it was like 4 arrows were shot at the same time. Every knight who came out of the fog was shot in the chest. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this situation, even nature was helping him. Thanks to the wind, all his arrows were able to find their target. How can one person have so much luck on top of so much talent? 4 arrows and 4 knights were down. Right that moment, while cheering, he said, "Yes. Bullseye." Then pulled 4 more arrows from his quiver and started waiting for more knights. The knights didn't even know where the arrows came from. We could see them through the trees, but they were unable to. He shoots 4 more times like lightning fast, but 2 of them miss the mark this time. He looked at me, face beaming with a smile, and said, "2 more down, my lord," but 2 of them didn't move as I predicted. 5 knights were left. I was looking at this 10-name-day-old child's face, but what I was seeing was not a child, it was a monster, and it was a monster that was playing with my knights like they were 2 name-days-old toddlers. The remaining 5 knights had finally realized where Aylmer was. They were trying to get close to him, zigzagging and hiding behind trees, and Aylmer was following them closely and trying to target them. This time he was shooting not all 4 arrows at once but one by one. He managed to hit 2 more of them, but all of his arrows were spent. He took out 2 smoke bombs from the pouch at his waist and threw them toward the incoming knights, all of whom were covered with fog in an instant. Aylmer too quickly plunged into the fog. There were shouts and bitter cries from within the fog, but we couldn't see anything. After 5 minutes, the shouts in the fog gave way to muffled groans, and the fog started to slowly dissipate due to the blowing wind. I had only one thing in mind when I saw that Aylmer was the only one standing tall when the fog had dissipated entirely. I wasn't raising the future Arthur Dane. I was raising a one-man army. Chapter 66. It's been 2 days since I left Winterfell. After hunting the knights like ducks and then talking with Lord Stark, I set off immediately. Lord Stark allowed me to travel north for 2 years, but I promised not to leave the north. He gave me 50 gold dragons and a pass to assist me in my journey. This pass would allow me to enter all the castles in the north as Lord Stark's representative and be well received. First, I went to my hut in Wolfswood and took all my familiars with me. The winter was gradually increasing in intensity with each passing day. Now everywhere was covered with snow because it had been raining non-stop for the last 24 hours since yesterday evening. There was about 10 centimeters of snow on the ground, which in turn affected the horse's movement speed. My movement was somewhat restricted, too, because of the coat and fur I was wearing on top of each other. I had broken my fasting with the first light of the morning and set off, but I couldn't move as fast as yesterday for the rest of the way. The horse had difficulty moving as the snow on the ground increased and the temperature dropped below zero. Although I was buffing my horse and using Inanni's motu, traceless movement, regularly, I was only able to travel twice the distance an average horse would travel in a day. Thanks to this journey, I learned one more effect of the stamina buff. The buff was increasing the resistance against the elements a bit. However, I would sleep in the training space when I camped at night to avoid freezing. I used 4 hours of my 8-hour training quota for sleep and was trying to learn how to use magic and sword together in harmony for the rest of my time here. I couldn't take the horse with me to the space, so I would create an earth shed for it with the Formotigan, mold earth, spell every night. My first target was the wall. I had read everything I could find about this place ever since I heard of its existence and was looking forward to getting there in about 8 to 14 days. There is no way in hell a wall of ice 215 m, 700 feet, high is made without the use of magic, and something that massive and that long still stands tall after 8,000 years. The distance between Winterfell and the wall was about 1,000 kilometers, 620 miles. This distance would take 8 days in the summertime for a fast horse, and slow horses take around 14 days to arrive. Considering the harsh winter weather and snow, it will take me at least 8 days to reach the wall despite all my buffs. If it were summertime, I would probably be there in 3 days. It had been 7 days since I had set off, and I had almost come to the end of this arduous 8-day journey. When I connect with Poe and fly, I can now see the wall. It had breathtaking majesty and beauty. I still had a day's journey by horse, but Poe could reach it in an hour. Poe could fly at a speed of 150 km per hour, but she could only maintain that speed for 10 to 15 minutes. The average speed was around 100 km per hour. I flew along this majestic wall for a few hours until Poe was tired and enjoyed the magnificent view. I'll arrive at the wall tomorrow night. We all entered the training space to do the evening training. Varys was still reluctant to fight and would leave training even when he was a little hurting. Poe and Erebus were fighting with all their fury against 2 dummies. They could kill a dummy in a one-on-one fight very quickly if the dummy was only defensive. So I had to pit them against an aggressive dummy sometime soon. On the other side, I was fighting against 2 dummies using magic and sword simultaneously. I was using Imu's poison at close range. He was also used to this fighting style. Since he was not as small as he used to be, he was not able to move as freely as before. But his lunge speed made up for this disadvantage. His lunge was so fast that dummies often only knew they had been bitten when the pain hit. When I took a break to rest, I turned and watched the training of Erebus and Poe. As usual, Erebus was attacking with full of vengeance. Just then, Poe was deflected by the dummy's defense and crashed to the ground. She looked pretty pissed off and quickly took off from the ground and started circling the dummy. Then she suddenly did a dive towards the dummy, but while she was halfway to the dummy, my eyes widened with shock because I could see Poe coalesce mana on her wings. Then with a final flapping of her wings, she threw that mana to the dummy through the tip of her wings. The second the mana left her wings, it took the attribute of wind element then crashed onto the dummy, sending it to the ground and caving his chest. Did she just now cast a wind ball spell? I saw it with my own eyes, but I still had difficulty believing it. Stop! All the dummies froze, and I said, Poe, what did you just do? I imitated Daddy. Did you impersonate me? Yes, Daddy was always using his mana and casting magic while fighting dummies, so I learned to extract mana from the inside because I wanted to be like Daddy. I still don't understand how Daddy pulls fire, earth, and lightning, but I can understand how you create wind. So I did the same thing Daddy did and hit the dummy with it. Daddy, did I do wrong? I thought I did right. I was still shocked at the revelation that she could cast magic, but I collected myself and said, No, 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 you did it splendidly, Poe. Bravo to my beautiful daughter, you are a genius Raven. Chapter 67. I was amazed to learn that Poe could do magic. Because of this astonishment and curiosity, I never slept that day and tried to teach Poe the other elements, but I was unsuccessful. She can only control the wind element, and the only magic she knew was the wind ball. I taught Poe to use the wind element in different ways without sleeping for the next 2 days. Poe's wind element spell was at level 1, but it didn't start at a useless level like mine. With this spell, she was able to cave in an adult human's ribcage. One of the ways I was able to teach her how to use the wind element and create a wind tunnel in front of her. In this way, her flight speed and stamina skyrocketed. But this method also had a downside at the moment. She had no problems when flying straight, but she couldn't get her flight turns as tight as she used to be because her speed had increased significantly. Who am I kidding? She was turning like a semi-truck right now. It was taking forever for her to finish a 90-degree turn. It was like how a jet would turn, she had to do a giant circle. But I think over time, she will be able to overcome this problem if her control over mana increases. I believe she can use small mana bursts like propulsions to make her turns sharp and fast, but this is a bit impossible for now. She can use the wind tunnel in open areas to increase the wind ball spell to near level 2 spell's power, but she needs a large area to move. First, she has to go to a high position, about 40 to 50 meters, then she dives towards her target rapidly, and just 3 or 4 meters away from the target, it casts the wind ball spell and rises suddenly. She is basically doing a dive bombing. This way, the spell gets almost as powerful as my level 2 wind spells. She was able to turn a wolf into a meat paste with this move. Even though her spell has less power than mine, her spell is more deadly. Because when she hits someone with this spell, they are crushed between the spell and the ground. But if I hit someone, I send them flying, so most of the power dissipates. This was a fascinating new experience for me, so I even forgot about the wall and trained her for a whole week before stopping, and the only reason I stopped was that she didn't listen to me and tried to use this move inside the training space and died. Because her power spiked too fast, she was starting to act too arrogant, and to be honest, she had the right to act a bit pompous. She basically became a World War II bomber, but I warned her not to use that move inside, and she didn't listen to me and used it anyway. In the end, she managed to kill the dummy, but couldn't control her ascension and crushed to the roof of the training room and broke almost all the bones in her body, then died before I could kick her out of the room. This was a wake-up call for her that the spells were not toys to play with. At least she crushed inside the training room. Yes, she had been through significant trauma and was still in shock, but at least she was alive. If this had happened while we were out, we would be burying her right now. After 15 days, I had finally arrived at the wall. How a huge 200 meters chunk of ice had survived like this for 8,000 years, my guess was magic, and I would finally be able to prove it. But there was something I wanted to try first. I drew the sword on my waist and first checked if there were people around. Promodines, locate animals, humans. After a few seconds, I confirmed that there were no people at least 3 kilometers in diameter. I then brought my free hand to my sword and cast Perseus Agros, Flame Blade. My entire sword disappeared into the orange and yellow flames. I grabbed my sword with both hands and said, "Force be with you." Then I stabbed my flaming sword into the wall. A shrill sizzling sound started to come the second my flaming sword touched the ice wall. The wall was slowly melting away, and my sword was slowly creeping in. Due to the melting ice and cold air, steam began filling the place. After 5 minutes of pushing the flaming sword into the wall, it was only able to pierce around 10 centimeters. To put more power, I buffed myself with strength and stamina buff. Even after the buffs, I was only able to push 5 cm more. After all that pushing, it didn't happen as I imagined. I had imagined my flaming sword would stab through the wall like butter, but it didn't even go in 1/3 of its length. I got angry and pushed with all the strength I had. At that moment, I felt the magic of the land get activated, and it was coming from the wall. Then I felt all the magic in my sword getting sucked by the wall, and my sword broke like glass. After my sword broke, the hole in the wall started to close. I threw the broken sword right away and put both of my hands on the wall, then tried to feel the flow of magic inside the wall. While I was waiting to find the wall full of ice elemental magic, it was not. This was so different. There wasn't any element inside the wall, it was pure arcane power, but that wasn't all there was. Inside the wall, it was inscribed with writings, giant writing. It was like I was looking at a colossal ice tablet. The wall was inscribed with runes from one end to the other. This writing looked like the runes I started to learn when I comprehended ritual magic, but other than one word, I didn't know what the rest meant. The runic writing was. The only word I recognized was death. The rest was a mystery to me. Chapter 68. It's been 8 days since I came to the wall. During this time, I tried to decipher the runes inside the wall, but I couldn't make any sense. The only word I knew the meaning of was death. After a few days, I gave up on deciphering and changed my focus on how the wall was built, but I couldn't make huge strides in that regard either. The wall is such a high-level ritual that I can't even sense what elements it is made of right now. I can only sense how the arcane power moves in its interior and where it came from. It sends mana to every part of the wall, like blood flowing through the veins in the body, and this mana flow happens in beats just like a heart pumps blood to the body. A wave of mana spreads throughout the wall every few seconds in something I can only call mana veins. Thanks to this mana heartbeat, the wall managed to stand tall for 8,000 years. The strange thing is that although the wall is obviously made of ice, I can't sense the ice element inside. So, I have no knowledge of what and how this wall is made of. It's like knowing that there is a blood circulation system inside a body but having no understanding of the bone, muscle, and skin structure of this body. I can't say that this research is useless. Observing the movements of mana in such a colossal structure allowed me to increase my control over my own mana. As a result, my max mana increased by 25, and now I have 175 mana. Another plus is that each of my buffs either got stronger or had an increased duration. I also clearly understood where the wall's energy came from. Ley lines or mana lines, whatever you want to call them. The wall has cut off the southward passage of these ley lines, so the wall must be destroyed before the magic can truly return to Westeros. The entire main ley line, which should span all of Westeros, feeds the wall. If the connections between the Weirwood trees are thin veins, this ley line is like the carotid artery of Westeros. Seeing this, I think this is one of the major reasons why magic died on this continent, and I think one of the other big reasons must be the death of dragons. Another thing I got was the improvement of Authenticate. Now I can know the physical stats of entities without fighting with them or observing their movements. All I have to do is send mana waves toward the being I want to authenticate, which works like a sonar. When the mana wave returns to me, I will clearly know how much strength and speed the being has. They no longer have a chance to hide their power from me. Of course, this doesn't work for beings that are warded or with mana equal to or higher than mine. Tomorrow I'll head west to get to the other side of the wall. I think I have enough soul space to bond with another beast. I want to get a shadowcat, wolf, or bear cub as my next familiar. If I can find a dire wolf cub would be the best thing, but they are rarer than diamonds. The doors on the waypoints on the wall only open when the men of Night's Watch go to ranging. It's the same in the east, and it's almost impossible to cross the point where the wall ends in the east because the Bay of Seals isn't cold enough, so the sea doesn't freeze. It's almost impossible to get around the wall from the East Watch. My current campsite is between the Icemark and Hoarfrost Hill castles. This is closer to the Bridge of Skulls, which is the westernmost crossing point. From this point, I can turn into a dog and easily cross to the other side of the wall. I continue to train Poe on the use of magic every evening, but the other familiars have yet to show any magical abilities. I don't think especially Erebus and Varys can cast spells. First of all, they are both muscle-headed, and second, they don't have a mana heart in their bodies, but they are both much stronger than they were a month ago. Varys, in particular, almost has the strength of an adult human. As for Imu, because he developed a mana heart, I expect him to develop magical abilities too. Since I will start my journey again tomorrow, I decided to sleep for 8 hours without training today. I set off early the following day, and my buffs getting stronger have been really great. I used to be able to use the Anani's Motu, traceless movement, only in the forest, and this magic was useless outside the forest. Now I can use it everywhere. The only difference is that it is not as effective as in the forest. If I step on snow and mud in the forest, I can move forward without leaving any traces, and even if I walk on 50 centimeters of snow, I will not sink into this snow, but outside the forest, this buff can only show 1/3 of its effect. Currently, there is an average of 30 centimeters of snow depth, and I am sinking only 10 centimeters. This is also true when I buff my horse, too. So, the weight has no effect. This buff will make this journey so much easier and faster. I always say this, but I have to say it again. I love magic. After passing the Bridge of Skulls, I continued to head north while spreading the murders of Poe and Erebus in all directions. I told them to find big grey cats, giant wolves, and bears, but they haven't found any yet. They found many wolves, but none of them were dire wolves, just ordinary wolves. I followed the stream for about 5 hours, and at the same time, I was searching for dire wolves, shadow cats, and bears using promodines, locate animals, as it came out of cooldown. I thought the north of the wall was full of wildlings, but even though I've been north of the wall for 9 hours, I haven't encountered a single wildling. It was getting late, and I was starting to get tired. After hunting for something to eat, I created an earthen hut and went into the training space to rest. The north of the wall had 2 differences from the south of it. After coming here and spending a day, I realized that the winter south of the wall is not real winter. At the south of the wall, it was about -5 or 10 degrees, but here, it was at least -20 degrees or perhaps colder. For the first time in my life, the snot flowing down from my nose froze into an icicle. How the hell is it possible for humans to live here all their lives? Chapter 69. I've been traveling north for 3 days, but I couldn't find any one of the animals I wanted. As I went further north, I started to approach wildlings many times, but each time I changed direction and stayed away from them. After all, this side is their land, since killing people trying to survive would be cruel, so I try to stay away from them if possible and not shed blood in vain. This side is really barren lands of ice and howling wind. There are animals in the forests, but it's no wonder that very few wildlings come to the south raid all the time. How can we expect humans to live when even animals don't want to live here? But there is one plus here, since the ley lines do not feed a colossal structure like the wall. The mana density of this side is at least 3 times that of the other side. But even that is too little for me. This side's mana density should be about 6 or 7 times. Maybe the disappearance of the magic affected this side as well, or there is a colossal mana-supplied structure on this side as well. In one of Old Nan's stories, she talked about something called Heart of Winter. Magic and dragons are real, maybe there is some truth in the other stories too. Thanks to a murder of 60 ravens, I can scout an area of 2 to 3 kilometers without using promodynes, locate animals. In this way, I can use the locating spell for the animals I am looking for. Promodynes, locate animals, Shadowcat. I can now clearly feel the mana waves spreading in all directions starting from me. Studying the wall made me understand the workings of my spells much better. While I was contemplating about my spells, I felt it. One Shadowcat, around 4 kilometers northeast of here. I buffed myself and started running with all my might. I can't lose this one, I have to catch it. Please be a cub, please be a cub, please be a cub. I don't think I have enough mana to mount an adult Shadowcat. Thanks to the belief Motu, traceless movement. For me, running through a snow-covered forest was no different than running on a straight road. So I ran like the wind through trees and bushes without slowing down. Po, don't wait for us, fly straight this way, find the big cat immediately, and let me know. Po wrapped her body with the wind element and accelerated like a rocket. Before she could use mana, Po's max speed was 100 kmph, 65 miles per hour, which she could only sustain for 5 to 10 minutes. Currently, its maximum speed is 150 kmph, 95 miles per hour, and she can maintain it for half an hour. After some time, Po made contact with me. Daddy, I found it. Puppy or adult? An adult. I spit on my luck. I stopped running and started thinking. Should I still catch this and try to bond with it? 99% won't work, but let's try anyway. Keep following Po, what is he doing now? It caught a wolf, and it's eating it. I was running towards the Shadowcat but wasn't in such a hurry now that it was under Po's watchful eyes. When I reached Shadowcat, it had eaten half the wolf. It is a magnificent creature, its appearance was something like a combination of leopard and tiger. Bigger than a leopard but not as big as a tiger, but its strength became evident from its huge shoulder and leg muscles that appeared under her thick black fur with white strips when it pressed with big claws to rip off a piece of the wolf carcass. From what I read about them in the bestiaries, they are fearsome predators. Shadowcats have deep, rumbling growls and furious screams. They are silent and agile hunters, but they can scavenge, too. That is why they can smell blood 10 km, 6 miles, away. When they catch prey, they will eat every piece of meat without leaving anything behind and even crush all the bones to get at the marrow. Shadowcats tend not to attack living men unless starved, but if they attack, they can disembowel a man with one claw strike. It was almost nighttime, and the Shadowcat's eyes seemed to glow in the dark. It noticed my presence, stopped eating, and immediately turned to me and took up an attacking position. Deep, rumbling growls started coming from it, and suddenly let out a deafening scream, then immediately started running towards me. Letagon, snare. It froze in place like a statue. This spell should hold it for several seconds. But after 2 seconds, the spell broke, and the Shadowcat lunged at me. I was caught off guard, and all I could do was roll sideways. It was like cold water was pouring down my back at that second. Its claw slashed my cheek if I had moved a little slower. My head wouldn't be on my shoulder right now. Shadowcat continued running without delay and jumped at the tree right in front of it, then bounced off the tree and lunged at me again. I was calm this time and didn't want to kill it, so I couldn't use deadly spells. I decided to use wind element spells. Raised my hand and said, Gelmio Indigo, Wind Impact. Strong wind hit the Shadowcat right in the chest, made it fly backward, and crash into a tree. It looked a little stunned. I took advantage of this gap to cast another immobilization spell. In Ratio, Entangle. Large roots sprouted from the ground and began to engulf the Shadowcat. It regained consciousness, but it was too late, the roots had utterly immobilized it, and this time it couldn't break the spell as it did to Ledagon because this spell is actually using real roots and growing them. Therefore, have higher durability than Ledagon, but the drawback is this spell cannot be used if there are no roots underground. I approached Shadowcat, who was still struggling to escape, and struck him with the hilt of my sword, knocking it unconscious. Then I put my hand on its head. Chapter 70. I spent 150 mana to create the bond, but not even half of it was formed. Even though Shadowcat was unconscious, it was fighting against me with all of its being. There was no point in wasting any more mana, so I gave up but learned something new. I needed 300 mana to bond with or dominate an adult Shadowcat. I slowly opened my eyes and sighed deeply. Even though I tried to console myself, it was a colossal waste of time and effort. Shadowcat started to wake up when I stopped trying to bond, and I sighed deeply again and started stroking its head. On the other hand, Shadowcat was trying to get rid of the roots as soon as it regained consciousness. I would love to release you, but you got my scent, and even if you ran away when I released you, you guys are genuinely good at tracking, and I am sure you will try to track me down and hunt me. So, I don't want a headache down the line. I'm sorry, but your life will end today. I said and stabbed my dagger into its throat. It struggled a bit more, then took its last breath and died. I cancelled the In Ratio spell and took out my skinning set, and skinned the Shadowcat with mastery. While I was skinning this kitten without damaging its fur, I thought of the first rabbit I skinned a year ago. At that time, I had ruined it so severely that it was torn to pieces. While they were skinning the Shadowcat's fur, suddenly, there were whimpering sounds. When I looked in the direction where the sound came from, I realized that the sound was coming from a small den among the rocks. As I approached this den, the whimpering coming from it sounded like it belonged to a puppy. I cautiously looked into the den, and there was a cub inside. I was too big to get in, and the cub was too deep for me to reach and grab it. Varys, get inside and get that baby out without hurting him. Master, do I have to? It smells like wolves. I looked at him angrily and shouted in an angry voice. Of course, it is going to smell like a wolf, it is a fricking wolf's den. I spoiled Varys a bit too much, as he can still be counted as a puppy, but I should start being more strict with him. He got in while mumbling something and got the cub out of there. It was grey-colored female wolf cub. I don't think I have any luck finding any of the animals I want. Should I just bond with a regular wolf? Shadowcats can also be found south of the Wall, Mountains of the Moon of Vale, mountains around Riverlands, and Red Mountains of Dorne. But each of these places is far from where I live, and this place is the closest place I can find Shadowcats. Let's not be impulsive, I can keep this one for now, and if I can't find any of the ones I want, I will just bond with her. But where do I find Shadowcat cubs? I gave the wolf cub to Varys and told him to look after it. Then I continued to skin the carcass. While I was doing that, it hit me like lightning. Of course, Ermer, you are an idiot. Why would a Shadowcat bring its cub with them when they are hunting? They would only bring them when they became juveniles to teach them how to hunt. The cubs would be in their den. Shadowcat makes their den at high places, with limited access. I turned my sight to the mountains, where the dens would be. It is tough to climb a mountain while holding a cub, so I made a makeshift basket from some rope, blanket, and branches and put the cub inside it. This way, I can carry her on my back. While climbing, I would use promodines, locate animals, every time it came out of cooldown to find any one of the 3 animals I'm looking for. As I climb the mountain, it keeps getting colder and colder. I'm beginning to feel the cold before climbing the fur coat, and the stamina buff was enough to keep me warm. But now I'm starting to tire faster, and it feels frigid. The temperature must be 30 below zero or colder now, and I can feel the cold in my bones. I've been wandering the slopes of this icy mountain for 2 days and haven't found anything yet. Erebus and Poe would have frozen long ago if it weren't for the training space, so we left their murder at the base of the mountain. My assurance in climbing the mountain so fearlessly was training space, but even it started to feel insufficient now. I seriously began to think about whether I should go back or not. If Authenticate didn't work like a natural compass, I would have lost my way on this mountain long ago. Promodines, locate animals, Shadowcat. As I was giving up, that beautiful glow started showing itself. Yes, yes, yes. At last, I found 2 of them, which are around 3 kilometers away, but the problem is they are higher up the mountains. Because I'm going to get close to an animal with a perfect sense of smell, I have to use Anani's Motu, traceless movement. But first, I will scout with Poe. It is going to be a bit hard for her in this weather, but she can do it. As I slowly walk up the mountain, through our connection, I can feel Poe is struggling to fly because of the strong winds. I connect with her and share her sight. She goes up and down in the air, flying with great difficulty. Poe, if it is hard, come back. We can try and find another den some other time. No, Daddy, I can do it, I'm almost there. Look, I can see them. I hope at least one of them is a cub, and Poe's sight gets clearer so we can see them. 1 cub and 1 female. The cub would climb onto its mother's back, and the mother would hit it with her tail and knock it down to the snow, and each time the baby would climb back onto its mother. It was an adorable sight, but at this moment, I didn't care about that at all. Even if it's the sweetest scene in the world, all I can think about right now is the cub is mine. Poe had perched upon a tree and tried to hide from the harsh wind while we were around 2 kilometers away and slowly getting close to them. If possible, I didn't want to kill the mother. At the end of the day, the cub was going to be a part of my familiars, so I didn't want to kill its mother. While coming up, I thought of a plan. The mother needed to go hunting, that is why she makes her den in a hard-to-access place. When the mother is away, I will grab the cub. So, when I got close to them, I started to use the Formotigan, Mold Earth, spell to create an underground hiding place for all of us. It took me around 3 hours to finish it. After everyone got in, I closed the entrance and only left small holes so air could get in. This way, we could hide from the mother and be protected against the cold a bit.
Thanks for listening.